Chapter 592. Hey, you're here. Opening the door, Huang Yunfei looked at Jianghu standing outside the door and said with a smile. What can I do for you? Looking at Huang Yunfei who opened the door, Jianghu also came in and looked at the people who had already come here and said to Huang Yunfei with a smile. Hearing Jianghu's words, Huang Yunfei also took a look. Help me pack the candy box first. The balloons and other things are almost finished. Glancing at the room, although it was a mess, everything was almost done. Now Fu Yuan and Xiang Hua are playing with balloons, and they will go downstairs in a while. Now there is still a little trouble in packing the candy, and the manpower is not enough. Okay. After talking to Huang Yunfei, Jianghu went to the table over there and greeted Huang Yunfei's mother, who was organizing people to pack the candy box, and began to do it. These candy boxes were ordered from the internet. A few people are responsible for folding the box, a few people are responsible for taking the candy, and a few people are responsible for packing the box and sealing it, then putting it in a circle and tying it up. Now, weddings basically use such candy boxes, and they look good. The ones sent to the car are all big candy boxes for cigarettes. This needs to be packed separately. Now it is packed on the table on the wedding day. Jianghu is here, your wife didn't come back. Looking at Jianghu sitting here, Huang Yunfei's mother couldn't help but ask with a smile. Oh, she's back, but she's a little busy today. She'll come back tomorrow. Looking at the smiling Huang Yunfei's mother, Jianghu also said with a smile. Hearing Jianghu's words, Huang Yunfei's mother couldn't help but nod. Hey, your wife manages such a big company. It's inevitable that she's busy. You are really lucky to have such a good wife. How many years of hard work do you have? Looking at Jianghu, Huang Yunfei's mother couldn't help but say with emotion. Hearing Huang Yunfei's mother's words, Jianghu couldn't help but smile awkwardly. He didn't answer this, and he didn't know how to answer. Mom, what are you talking about? Now Jianghu's money is not less than his wife's. However, after Huang Yunfei heard his mother's words, he couldn't help but complain. After hearing her son's words, Huang Yunfei's mother couldn't help but look at Jianghu with a surprised expression. Then she chuckled and let this topic pass. Jianghu and Huang Yunfei used to be neighbors. Not only did the two live in the same community, but they also lived in the same building. Huang Yunfei was 1 year younger than Jianghu, but Huang Yunfei's mother and Jianghu's parents were high school classmates. Later, they started working in the same factory. However, Huang Yunfei's grandfather's family was somewhat capable. Jianghu's parents were just workers, while Huang Yunfei's mother worked in the government. Although she was just an ordinary worker, she was naturally well treated because she worked in the office all day long. And this person, to put it bluntly, was somewhat snobbish. In the past, when Qi Li's father resigned and went to the capital to make a living, she didn't even let Huang Yunfei and Qi Li play together. Later, when Qi Li's family became powerful, she even went to visit them. She even wanted to let Huang Yunfei and Qi Li date. She was quite ambitious. If Qi Li couldn't, then Qi Li's 2 younger sisters could. But later on, there was no need to think about it. Qi Li's family naturally wouldn't agree, but she never gave up. Until 2 years ago, when Qi Li married Jianghu, she finally gave up. But it took her 2 years to accept her current daughter-in-law, and she was still somewhat dissatisfied. Jianghu was still very familiar with Huang Yunfei's mother, but he had a good relationship with Huang Yunfei, so he selectively ignored this problem. After finishing the gift box, Jianghu went to tie up the balloons. I'm sorry, you also know my mother. Recently, she has been going through menopause. Now she speaks without thinking. When tying up the balloons outside, Huang Yunfei couldn't help but whisper to Jianghu. Hearing his words, Jianghu smiled and waved his hand. It's okay, I have known you for more than 20 years. How can I not know what your mother is like? I selectively ignored it. Looking at Huang Yunfei, Jianghu smiled casually. To be honest, he didn't care much about this at first. By the way, I just heard you say that your wife is coming tomorrow? Qi Li is back. At this time, Fu Yuan next to him also looked at Jiang Hai and asked with a look of surprise, because he remembered that when Jiang Hai came back, he clearly didn't bring Qili. Well, Qili is also back, tomorrow. It depends on the situation, maybe Qili and I will go, or maybe there will be more people going. After thinking about it, Jiang Hai said with a little embarrassment. After getting along with each other yesterday, although the three women didn't get along well, at least in front of Jiang Hai, they were not so hostile. After eating steamed buns yesterday, Jiang Hai and the others strolled around Central Street again. In the evening, after Qili sent Jiang Hai and the others home, she went back to her and Jiang Hai's new house to live in. Last year, during the new year, she actually lived there. It was really ironic that after she and Jiang Hai got married, she only lived there for one night, and after Jiang Hai left, she had lived there many times. As for Jiang Hai, he had a good night's sleep last night. This morning, after eating breakfast, he came over to help. As for the people who will go to the wedding tomorrow, Jiang Hai hasn't figured it out yet. According to his idea, if 4 people go together, well, it will be very awkward, but if he leaves others at home, he is somewhat embarrassed. Hey, men become bad when they are rich, they become bad. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei couldn't help but sigh. You have the nerve to say that? Do you think we don't know how messed up you are? Glancing at Huang Yunfei, Jiang Hai gave him a middle finger, and then said with a look of contempt. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei shook his head proudly. It's my fault, I am also a bad man, haha, by the way, after helping tonight, don't leave, let's go out and play. Huang Yunfei looked at the people around him and said with a mysterious face. Hearing his words, the men present raised their eyebrows. What? You want to have a bachelor's night? Hearing Huang Yunfei's words, Su Wei asked strangely. Flying chess? Don't know why, when Jiang Hai heard bachelor's night, he always thought of flying chess. Flying chess? Tomorrow, I will be a married man. We can't stay up too late at night. Tomorrow morning, we will pick up the bride at 6:00, and we will just take a simple bath at night. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei looked at Jiang Hai with contempt. Bath? Hearing Huang Yunfei's words, needless to say, this kid is definitely not going to just take a bath. Although there are many decent bathhouses in Bing City, there are also many not-so-decent bathhouses. In fact, all Wuxia is the same. The average fast food refers to massage, pedicure, hair washing, etc. The better ones are some baths, and the better ones are some entertainment clubs. These are all tacit things that all Wuxia men know, but when he heard what he said, Jiang Hai's heart was a little resistant. Okay, don't talk nonsense. Bachelor's night? Stay chaste for your wife tonight. If you meet the police, tomorrow is your wedding day, and also your divorce day. Jiang Hai patted Huang Yunfei and said with a serious face. TSK, so boring. You are a man with a full stomach who doesn't know the hunger of a hungry man. You have Qili, and that girl, what's her name again? Oh, by the way, Ai Xiaoxi, these 2 girls are the best. You have a good night, but you don't think about us. Hearing that Jiang Hai is not interested in going out to play, Huang Yunfei can't help but say with some jealousy. If his wife is as beautiful as Qili or Ai Xiaoxi, he will also not be willing to go out. Don't be ridiculous. You're getting married tomorrow. Be honest. When we get to America. Alright, I don't think you'll be able to have fun there. Fu Yuan and Su Wei are both single. You should just give up. Looking at Huang Yunfei's expression, Jiang Hai said with a smile. When Fu Yuan and Su Wei heard Jiang Hai say that there is a program in Winthrop, they can't help but raise their eyebrows. Compared to having fun here, they were more interested in Caucasian women and the like. While the group was talking and laughing here, they had already tied up the balloons. Then everyone drove to the venue and looked at the decorations there. There was also the wedding day, which was tomorrow's speech with the MC. After all this was done, the sky was dark. When it was time for dinner, Jiang Hai deliberately called Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi. When Huang Yunfei and the others found out that Jiang Hai was not dragging 2 people, but 3 people, they despised Jiang Hai even more. Especially Feng Yunshan, Xiang Hua, and Fu Yuan knew her. After all, they were all classmates. This is a super beauty. Now that she is with Jiang Hai, it has caused a lot of harm to these married and unmarried people. Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi also met Jiang Hai's brothers in advance. After dinner, Jiang Hai and the others left first. As for whether Huang Yunfei had a bachelor's night, Jiang Hai probably didn't. Because halfway through the meal, his father came and said that he came to thank Jiang Hai and the others. He can't go to a bachelor's night with his father, right? Wouldn't his mother and his wife tear them apart? But in any case, this busy day was over. After Jiang Hai, Feng Yunshan, and Ai Xiaoxi returned home, they washed up and went to bed. After all, early in the morning, he still has to help. But before going to bed, he has to figure out who will be going tomorrow. You and Qili go. We don't have a legitimate reason to go. Besides, we have seen your brothers. It doesn't matter if you go tomorrow or not. Just when Jiang Hai said this, Feng Yunshan had already said directly. Ai Xiaoxi, who was originally interested in this wedding, also closed her mouth at this time. She knew that Feng Yunshan would not harm her. Chapter 593. Just as Jiang Hai fell asleep, on the big bed in the new room where Jiang Hai and Qili were supposed to be lying together, Qili was staring at the ceiling with her eyes wide open, unable to fall asleep. She didn't know what was wrong with her. To be honest, her feelings for Jiang Hai were somewhat indescribable. In the beginning, Qili didn't like Jiang Hai. Needless to say, it was clear. However, after a year of settling down, other than using Jiang Hai as a shield, she felt more confused and slightly indebted to him. Otherwise, she wouldn't have wanted Jiang Hai to go to the imperial capital to take charge of some things to prove himself after hearing what others said. Unfortunately, at that time, she found out that Jiang Hai had already gone to the United States. Moreover, Jiang Hai's combination of punches made her a little confused. She didn't know when the slightly shy Jiang Hai in her memory had become a man. Then, Feng Yunshan and her snatched Jiang Hai. At that time, she hadn't fallen in love with Jiang Hai yet. She even felt a little disgusted. The reason why she wanted to snatch Jiang Hai back was just like a little girl's toy being snatched away by someone else. This toy was hers. She didn't have to play with it, but others couldn't touch it. Jiang Hai was her toy at that time. But then, the sky-high price of beef, the perfect seafood. When these mysterious things attracted her to the United States, that night, when Jiang Hai saved her, Jiang Hai's figure was officially imprinted in her heart. Although it was very cliché to say that a hero saving a damsel in distress, the more cliché and melodramatic it was, the more popular it was. Qili was a strong existence. When her strength was useless, she was saved by Jiang Hai. Then, her strength turned into love faster and faster. Later, she found a different side of Jiang Hai. Jiang Hai's beef allowed her Qi group to gain a foothold in the imperial capital in an instant and enter the food and beverage industry that she had always wanted to enter. Later, Jiang Hai came back decisively and killed the Yin family. He also had connections with the higher-ups in the country. He made the higher-ups in the country give in and no longer let Qili's 4 restaurants pay taxes. He also had connections with the royal family in the Middle East. Women, especially a strong woman like Qili, worshipped the strong. Jiang Hai became stronger little by little in a year in front of her. From a man who needed a chance to prove himself with her charity, he became a strong existence now. An existence so powerful that she had to look up to him had appeared in front of her just like that. And the original curiosity and possessiveness gradually turned into liking, admiration, and love. It was as simple as that. The night before yesterday, Qili was really stimulated and took the initiative to want to do something with Jiang Hai. But Jiang Hai's performance made her happy, but also made her hesitate. She was happy because Jiang Hai still had her in his heart. And Jiang Hai could see that she liked him very much and still had feelings for him. These were very important. And she hesitated because of what Jiang Hai said to her. If it was a year ago, she would be Jiang Hai's only one. But now, she gave up on him and he was no longer her only one. If she wanted Jiang Hai to come back, she might have to accept more than just Jiang Hai alone. This was also one of the most annoying things for her. What should I do? Looking at the ceiling, Qi thought with some hesitation. Accept others just like that? Qi was unwilling. Give up on Jiang Hai just like that? Her heart would hurt, and she would be even more unwilling. Or should she continue like this? But she was not young anymore. She also had to consider these things. This was a crossroads. Whether it was left, right, or forward, she was at a loss. What to do? This was a problem. Qi didn't know when she fell asleep. When the phone rang, she was still in a half-awake state. When she saw the number on the phone, she couldn't help but wake up a little. Hello? Jiang Hai. Looking at the name on the phone, Qi answered the phone and said to Jiang Hai on the other side of the phone. Hello, I'm downstairs. Pack up and leave. I'll pick you up at 5:00. Hearing the voice of Jiang Hai on the other side of the phone, Qi forced herself to wake up. After saying, "Oh," she got out of bed. A strong woman like her had strong control over her body. If she wanted to wake herself up, she would wake up. If she wanted to make herself excited, she would be excited. After getting up, she took a few deep breaths. She went to the bathroom first. She washed her face, brushed her teeth, and then did her hair. Other women would need 2 hours to get out of the house, but she only needed less than 20 minutes to get out of the house. She had already prepared the clothes she was going to wear today. After putting on the clothes and high heels, she took a small bag and went downstairs. When she took the elevator downstairs, she just saw Jiang Hai yawning in the cold. The hood of his clothes had already been buckled on his head, and his hands were tucked into his sleeves. He was yawning and looking around. When she saw Qi coming downstairs, she couldn't help but brighten up. Today, Qi finally changed out of her office lady clothes. But the clothes she was wearing now were still full of aura. She wore a set of clothes inside. The top was a slightly tight beige shirt with a wide belt made of black cloth. The bottom was also beige trousers, which showed that her legs were particularly long. Coupled with a pair of beige high heels, and a white, shawl-like woman's suit. With her makeup today, and her hair in a bun, wearing a necklace, earrings, and a pair of sunglasses, she looked so strong that Jiang Hai didn't dare to go up and talk to her. The domineering aura of the president shocked Jiang Hai for a moment, and he forgot that he was a little cold. You came down. Looking at Qi in front of him, Jiang Hai hesitated and felt that he should say something first. Is it just you? The two of them aren't going? Looking around and finding that only Jiang Hai was there, Qi asked strangely. Oh, it's just me, they aren't going. Hearing Qi words, Jiang Hai naturally knew who she was asking and immediately replied. Hey, they are quite good. If it's just the two of us, then we won't drive this car. Let's drive this. I just bought this a few days ago. Hearing that Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi weren't going, Qi couldn't help but smile, and then led Jiang Hai to the underground parking lot. As soon as he walked in, Jiang Hai saw a fiery red sports car parked there from far away. Wow, there are people who buy such a sports car in this community. After all, he has lived here for a year, Jiang Hai asked strangely. He now has some understanding of cars. This car is a Ferrari 488. Although the number is not very auspicious, it is also a good thing in the domestic sports car industry. The cheapest car, the fruit car, is worth 38 million, not to mention that this car doesn't look cheap. If it is expensive, it is nearly 4 million, plus the purchase tax and so on, it is almost 4,300,000 or 400,000. This is mine, Yi Zichen said. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi couldn't help but smile. She picked up the key, unlocked the car, and walked over. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be a little confused. She bought a car, but why did she buy a car and put it here? I have to thank you for this car. I bought it with the tax I saved. The reason why this car is parked here is that I am going to give this car to Xiao Yi. Maybe she felt Jiang Hai's confusion. Qi Li sat down and said after getting in the car. Hearing Qi Li's words, Jiang Hai also shrugged. Anyway, it is her money. She can do whatever she wants. Besides, Jiang Hai also knows that in the eyes of Qi Li and Qi Li's mother, Jing Xiao is like their sister and daughter. Not to mention that Jiang Hai doesn't care about the money. Even if he does, he can't stop Qi Li from giving it to her. But before sending it, let's be the first batch of passengers. Looking at Jiang Hai, who got into the car and fastened his seatbelt, Qi Li said with a smile. Then she stepped on the accelerator and drove out of the underground parking lot. After leaving the community, the sports car was like a ball of fire on the road when the sun just rose, moving forward quickly. At about 5:30, Jiang Hai and the others had already arrived at Huang Yunfei's new home. Well, in addition to the house he bought over the years, he bought another house for this wedding. Don't talk about how much the doctors and nurses earn. After all, this was what Jiang Hai saw with his own eyes. At this time, there were many cars parked downstairs of his new house. The owners of these cars were basically his parents' friends, relatives, colleagues, and so on. Although they made a lot of money, the cars they drove were not very good. Basically, cars that cost more than 200,000 yuan or 300,000 yuan were the most expensive. Most of them only cost about 200,000 yuan. Because a lot of the money they made was not exposed to the public. Although they didn't lack money to drive cars that cost millions, if they drove cars that cost millions, it was inevitable that they would be reported and investigated. At that time, it would be troublesome. Therefore, when Jiang Hai's car arrived, many people looked at Jiang Hai's car and began to whisper to each other. When the car was parked, Jiang Hai and Qi Li got out of the car. They were particularly eye-catching. Qi Li was originally beautiful. Coupled with her aura and the red sports car that added a few hundred points, she instantly attracted a lot of attention. And there was only comparison when there was a comparison. Jiang Hai next to her was dressed in sportswear, which made her feel like a goddess. This made several people who were leaning against the car and chatting subconsciously tidy up their clothes and show their watches, hoping to attract the attention of the goddess. Unfortunately, at this time, Qi Li only had Jiang Hai in her eyes. After getting out of the car, she naturally held Jiang Hai's arm, which really shocked the people on the ground. Jiang Hai didn't care about these people. He took Qi Li upstairs. Upstairs, Fu Yuan and the others had already arrived in advance. They were there to pack up the candy box and prepare to go downstairs. When they saw Qi Li, they couldn't help but secretly click their tongues. Chapter 594. They already knew that Qi Li was pretty. After all, they had seen Qi Li at Jiang Hai's wedding. But except for that one time, they didn't seem to have seen Qi Li again. After all, Qi Li wasn't interested in Jiang Hai at first, so she didn't even look at Jiang Hai's friends. Now that they saw Qi Li come out, it was as if all the light was concentrated on Qi Li's body. Not only were the men unable to move their eyes away, the women were also the same. Hey, congratulations. Looking at everyone's appearance, Jiang Hai has to admit that he has gained a lot of face. He smiled at Huang Yunfei and gave him a red packet. There were 500 renminbi in the red packet. Don't look at the small amount of money. Jiang Hai could afford to pay more. He could afford to pay 1,000, 10,000, or even 100,000. However, there was no need for that. Firstly, Huang Yunfei's family was not short of money. Secondly, Bing City's custom was to return the same amount of money you gave this time. When Jiang Hai got married, Huang Yunfei gave him 500 renminbi. So, Jiang Hai also gave him 500 renminbi. Even if Jiang Hai gave him 10,000 renminbi this time, he still had to return the 10,000 renminbi the next time Jiang Hai got into trouble. There was no need for him to do so. Also, Jiang Hai wanted to see how much Fu Yuan and the rest had given him. After all, they were all buddies. Jiang Hai did not need to do this. This was just a small gift. Thank you, but I say, sigh, forget it. After taking the money from Jianghu, Huang Yunfei glanced at Qi Li and swallowed his words. He really wanted to say that he did not want Qi Li to go. It was because she was too eye-catching. His wife was just an ordinary person. Even if she was wearing a wedding dress today, she would probably be outclassed by Qi Li by a few hundred levels. When Qi Li stood there, not many people would look at them. But he could not say this. Was Qi Li an ordinary person? She was President Qi, and her family was worth tens of billions. He had come here to give him face, yet he still dared to grumble. Did he still have any shame? Besides, he also felt that Qi Li was very pleasing to the eye. It was just that all of a sudden, he was not as excited to get married as before. Damn, there is a red Ferrari downstairs. It's so cool. Is it your friend's? At this moment, Xiang Hua also ran up from downstairs. Just now, he and Su Wei went to press red paper for the community's manhole cover and just came back. As soon as he went upstairs, he began to talk. To be honest, there were few men who disliked cars. This car was indeed very beautiful. That's mine. Why? Is it in the way? Hearing Xiang Hua's words, Qi Li also saw Xiang Hua. She knew that this was Jianghu's smile, so she deliberately showed a smile and said politely to Xiang Hua. As a result, when Xiang Hua heard the voice, he looked up and was stunned. In fact, it was not only him who was stunned. Su Wei, who came up later, Huang Yunfei, and Fu Yuan, who were in the room, were also stunned. Cough, sister-in-law, try not to smile at the wedding later. Xiang Hua, who had a wife, was the first to react. He smiled awkwardly, and then said to Qi Li. When Qi Li heard his words, she stared at Jianghu and blinked, indicating that she did not quite understand. Looking at her, Jianghu also smiled. Sigh, I really wonder if you're here to cause trouble. You'd better hurry up and give out the candies. By the way, take your beautiful wife away. Otherwise, my mother will feel uncomfortable again. By the way, since you're driving a Ferrari here, you can be my driver later. Looking at Qi Li's cute appearance, Huang Yunfei felt that his original excitement calmed down again. But suddenly, he had an idea. Qi Li's car could be his driver. For this wedding, Huang Yunfei's wedding car was a Bentley. Originally, he was going to use this as the driver. But now that he had a sports car, it was best to use it as a driver. It would be much more beautiful in the video. Okay, no problem. Hearing Huang Yunfei's words, Qi Li also smiled and said to Huang Yunfei. Her smile stunned the people in the room again. Seeing this scene, Jianghu shrugged helplessly. He had to admit that Qi Li really gave him face. Of course, there were many people around Jianghu who could give him face like this, but Qi Li was the most dignified. Carrying a plastic bag of candy, Jianghu and Fu Yuan went downstairs again. After letting Qi Li go back to the car and wait, Jianghu and the others went to give out the candy. But after a few steps, when they were sure that Qi Li had gotten into the car and waited, Fu Yuan couldn't help but pat Jianghu's shoulder. I say, when did sister-in-law become so beautiful? Among these brothers, Jianghu's age was the second youngest, only older than Huang Yunfei, so it was not bad for them to call Qi Li sister-in-law. It has always been like this. After thinking about it, Jianghu said very clearly. Qi Li really hasn't changed much. Damn, I didn't know that sister-in-law was so beautiful. God, you have such a wife, and you still go out to flirt? Pointing at Jianghu, Su Wei was also a little stunned. He couldn't imagine that Jianghu was so fierce. Sweat, it's not like you don't know the things between us. You make it sound like I'm wrong. Hearing their words, Jianghu wiped his sweat. These guys forget their friends when they see a woman. This is my wife. If this is a beauty that they don't know, they will go crazy. Looking at their eyes that were about to burst into flames, Jianghu looked at them contemptuously and said. With such a beautiful wife, what does it matter if it's right or wrong? Unless she goes out to find a man, otherwise, as long as she doesn't leave me, I can put up a board to worship her at home. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Xiang Hua said with some disappointment. His wife is so beautiful, does it matter who is right and who is wrong? You say this as if Feng Yunshen and Ai Xiaoxi are not beautiful. Hearing their words, Jiang Hai curled his mouth and said with disdain. When they heard what Jiang Hai said, they were stunned again. Indeed, when they saw Ai Xiaoxi the day before yesterday, they were stunned. When they saw Feng Yunshen yesterday, they were also stunned. These three are rare beauties, but now they are all taken by Jiang Hai, this pig. Ai, it's intolerable. There are some things that can't be envied. Let's go. Looking at the brothers around him, Fu Yuan sighed helplessly and continued to give out candies and cigarettes. Not long after all the candies and cigarettes were given out, it was almost 8 o'clock. Anyway, it was an auspicious time. Jiang Hai didn't look at the specific time. The team lined up and started to set off. The first car was naturally Qi Li's Ferrari 488. Jiang Hai sat in the front passenger seat. They followed the video car all the way to the front. After about half an hour, they arrived at the woman's home. This time, Jiang Hai didn't bring Qi Li up, because if something really happened, it would be troublesome. So they just went up, knocked on the door, gave out red packets, looked for shoes, and so on. After everything was done, they put on the new shoes for the bride, went downstairs, took some photos, and recorded some videos. After that, they got into the wedding car and went to the place of the ceremony. When they arrived at the scene, most of the things were already done. The only thing left was the ceremony. Jiang Hai and the others didn't need to do anything. Huang Yunfei's two cousins had already prepared the fake wine. At the wedding, the bride and groom had to toast each other, and this wine was not real wine 90% of the time. Of course, it didn't rule out that some people had a high alcohol tolerance, so when they drank, they used real wine. Huang Yunfei had a good alcohol tolerance, but he wasn't going to use real wine. The wine was a bottle of white wine. After the white wine was poured out, the bottle would be stained with the smell of white wine. Then, mineral water was poured in. There was a trace of alcohol smell, but it didn't have any alcohol content. Jiang Hai also had an important task, which was to sit next to Qi Li. If someone saw that Qi Li was too beautiful and had bad intentions, it would be troublesome. So, it was better to let her husband, Jiang Hai, sit there and watch. Moreover, Qi Li didn't know anyone here, so it was still very awkward to sit there. Sure enough, with Jiang Hai sitting here, although there were a lot of men looking over, none of them dared to come over. The two also chatted casually. The atmosphere was good, but Jiang Hai could see that Qi Li was a little absent-minded. What's wrong? Looking at Qi Li, Jiang Hai asked strangely. This was not like the Qi Li he knew. It's nothing. Jiang Hai, drink with me later. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qi Li shook her head, then looked up at Jiang Hai and said with a serious face. She said that she wanted to drink, so Jiang Hai naturally wouldn't disagree. If she wanted to drink, then drink. With the end of the wedding ceremony, the chopsticks were officially handed out. Jiang Hai just picked up the chopsticks and prepared to eat something. After all, he really didn't eat anything since the morning. But before the chopsticks could pick up anything, Qi Li had already handed over a glass of wine that had been filled to the brim. Looking at Qi Li's serious eyes, Jiang Hai took the wine. Come on, drink. Seeing Jiang Hai take the wine, Qi Li didn't say anything. She directly raised her head and drank the glass of wine. Seeing her like this, Jiang Hai was shocked. It should be known that it was white wine, not water. Although the wine used by Huang Yunfei for the banquet was not very good wine, it was still 38%. This glass was 2.5 ounces. Jiang Hai felt uncomfortable just looking at it, but Qi Li drank the wine directly and then placed the glass in front of Jiang Hai. Okay. Looking at her, Jiang Hai sighed helplessly and then drank his glass. To be honest, Jiang Hai was afraid of drinking now. After all, he had 4 times the physical fitness of the human limit. In addition, he used to drink wine every day in the manor. This wine was nothing to him, but for Qi Li, it was. Chapter 595. After drinking a glass of wine, Qi Li's face suddenly turned pale instead of red. After all, Qi Li's starting point was quite high. When she started working, she was already the general manager and chairman. The deals she went to discuss were basically all from the imperial capital, or even from the upper echelons. She couldn't touch those nouveau riche and careless fellows. Even if she did, the other party wouldn't dare to use a chicken feather as an arrow. Therefore, when she first started to take power, basically, it was fine as long as she was present. As long as she was present, no one would deliberately force her to drink. It was normal for a glass of red wine to accompany her until the end of the meeting, so her alcohol tolerance was really not very good. Most importantly, this was not red wine, but white wine. After drinking this glass, not to mention her, even a man may not be able to withstand it. After all, she drank in such a hurry. Come on, let's drink again. Seeing that Jianghu also drank up the wine, Qi Li couldn't help but pour another glass into her glass. Then she wanted to pour another glass for Jianghu. Looking at her, Jianghu frowned and pulled up the bottle. Don't stop me, I really want to drink today. Looking at Jianghu, Qi Li said with a serious face. Looking at her eyes, Jianghu's hand gradually loosened, then he sighed and put the food he picked with his chopsticks on Qi Li's plate. If you want to drink, eat first. Looking at Qi Li, Jianghu said seriously. Hearing Jianghu's words, Qi Li also smiled. She didn't reject Jianghu's kindness. She lowered her head and ate up the food. As soon as she finished eating, Jianghu put another plate on her plate. So in this way, Jianghu put more food on her plate and she ate there. Unknowingly, she also ate some food. After eating about 3 plates, she put down her chopsticks, picked up the wine glass directly, and looked at Jianghu. Jianghu also knew that she couldn't eat much. 3 plates of food was almost enough, and the food here didn't taste good. Now seeing that she stopped eating and looked up at Jianghu, Jianghu also sighed. After eating the food on her plate, he also picked up the wine glass. If she wanted to drink, let her drink. Anyway, Jianghu was here, nothing would happen. When the two's wine glasses touched, Qi Li drank up the glass in an instant. Perhaps because there was some food in her stomach, Qi Li's face was still a little pale, but it was already a little red. Come, let's drink again. Seeing that Jianghu also drank up the wine, Qi Li picked up another bottle and filled it for Jianghu and herself. Then, without waiting for Jianghu to say anything, she directly raised her head and drank up the wine. Seeing this scene, Jianghu was speechless. She was going to make herself more today. Drinking 3 glasses directly was 7.5, which was enough to settle her. Jianghu was not afraid that she would drink too much, but it would be troublesome if she drank and hurt herself. Just as Jianghu hesitated to drink up the 3rd glass, Qi Li had already poured the 4th glass. Hey, don't drink in such a hurry. The bride and groom are here to propose a toast. Seeing that she was about to drink again, Jianghu could not help but put his hand on the glass and said to Qi Li. Hearing Jianghu's words, Qi Li also looked at the 2 newlyweds who were walking over. We didn't propose a toast at that time. Looking at the 2 people walking over, Qi Li's tongue was a little stiff. Looking at the 2 people in front of her, Qi Li whispered. Hearing her words, Jianghu also sighed. Indeed, they didn't propose a toast. At that time, you were in a bad mood. After thinking for a while, Jianghu found an excuse for her. Yeah, I was in a bad mood at that time. I was thinking about my dad, but now I'm still in a bad mood because I'm thinking about another man, a bastard named Jianghu. Hearing Jianghu's words, Qi Li was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said to Jianghu. Hearing her words, Jianghu could not help but be speechless. How was he supposed to answer this? The newlyweds are here. Come, 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 let me propose a toast to you. I wish you a happy life and a happy marriage. At this moment, Huang Yunfei and his wife also walked over, holding 2 glasses of water and looking at everyone with a smile. At this moment, Qi Li took the initiative to walk over and said to the newlyweds. Looking at Qi Li's appearance, Huang Yunfei could not help but be a little confused. What's going on? And before he could say anything, she directly drank a glass of wine. Seeing this scene, the people who were eating at the table were also a little confused, and Huang Yunfei was also a little embarrassed. What is this little episode? Cough, it's my first time drinking. Maybe I drank too much. Let's drink. By the way, you are going to take photos in a while. I'll lend you my car first. I'll park it in your garage tonight. I'll come to you tomorrow. Looking at Qi Li's current situation, Jiang Hai couldn't help but feel a little depressed. He walked a few steps to Qi Li's side and hugged her in his arms, then apologized to Huang Yunfei. After drinking his wine, he took the car key out of Qi Li's bag. Now neither of them can drive. After all, they both drank. Even if Jiang Hai is fine, they can't drive. You know, drunk driving in Wuxia is punishable by jail. Unlike in the United States, drinking and driving is at most community service. Jiang Hai doesn't want to experience the taste of the Northeast prison, so he directly threw the car key to Huang Yunfei. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei's eyes lit up. If he can use Jiang Hai's car for the video later, it will be great. That's fine, you take care of sister-in-law first. If you feel uncomfortable, you can send sister-in-law back first. We will play cards in the afternoon. If you have time, come over and thank you in the evening. I will call you then. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei also said with a smile. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai also waved his hand, and then nodded apologetically to the people around him. He then walked out of the restaurant with Qi Li, who was already a little unstable and drunk. However, although Qi Li was a little drunk, after all, she drank half a liter. However, her consciousness was still very clear. She knew that the person who was caressing her was Jiang Hai, her husband. Therefore, her body took the initiative to lean against Jiang Hai's side, allowing Jiang Hai to caress her better. In this way, the 2 people took advantage of the chaos to leave first. After arriving downstairs, Jiang Hai took a taxi. The 2 sat in the back row, so that it was convenient for Jiang Hai to take care of her. Where are you 2 going? Seeing Jiang Hai and Qi Li get in the car, the taxi driver here couldn't help but look at Qi Li twice. Such a beautiful passenger, he didn't meet many times, and what's the situation now? Drunk too much? Is Jiang Hai a corpse picker? Go to XX Road XX. After getting in the car, Jiang Hai subconsciously reported the location of his home, but just after he finished speaking, Qi Li had already waved her hand and sat up, patting the driver's seat in front of her. No, go to XX Road XX community. I don't want to go to your home. That is your home, not my home. I want to go to our home, our new house. Looking at Jiang Hai, Qi Li said with a serious face. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai also sighed. Then go to XX Road XX community. Looking at the appearance of Jiang Hai and Qi Li, this made the taxi driver a little confused. 2 people's new house. If it's not that this woman is too unscrupulous, then these 2 may really be a couple or boyfriend and girlfriend. Although he was cursing in his heart, a flower inserted in cow dung, he still drove the car and drove to Jiang Hai's home. Sitting in the back of the taxi, Jiang Hai looked at Qi Li, who was already a little drunk, and Jiang Hai really didn't know what to say. The taxi was still quite fast. After arriving at the place, Jiang Hai paid the money and walked into the community with Qi Li. At first, the security guards of the community looked at Jiang Hai's movements and were shocked, but after seeing Jiang Hai and Qi Li, they were quiet because Jiang Hai and Qi Li were residents of this community, especially Jiang Hai. After all, a year ago, he lived here for a year, and Qi Li often came back recently, but this was the first time that the 2 appeared at the same time. However, since it was determined that they were the owners of the house, and they were a couple, these security guards couldn't interfere. After carrying Qili back to their former home, Jianghu couldn't help but feel emotional after opening the door. He lived here to wait for Qili, but now Qili lived here. Was she waiting for him? Jianghu really didn't know. After changing his shoes, the slippers were still in the original position. Jianghu carried Qili into the master bedroom, put her on the bed, and helped her take off her shoes and coat. As for the clothes inside, Jianghu didn't touch them. Looking at the drunk Qili, Jianghu squatted next to her and looked at her. Maybe she felt Jianghu's gaze. Although she had a headache, Qili still opened her eyes, and the two looked at each other. You can't drink. Why do you drink so much? Do you feel uncomfortable? If you feel uncomfortable, just vomit. I'll get you a basin. Looking at Qili, who was looking at him, Jianghu sighed and wanted to stand up and go to the bathroom to get a basin. But before he stood up completely, his hand was pulled by Qili. Although I drank a lot of wine, and my body is weak, my consciousness is still there. I am not drunk. Looking at Jianghu, Qili said with a serious face. Hearing Qili's words, Jianghu looked at her clear eyes. Sure enough, she has strong control over her body, especially in the spiritual aspect. Now she can't stand up, but her consciousness is still clear. Then what do you want to do? You tell me, I'll help you. Looking at Qili, who was looking at him, Jianghu bent down and asked her. I want you to **ck me. Hearing Jianghu's words, Qili said seriously. What? But when he heard what she said, Jianghu was a bit confused. This guy shouldn't be drunk, right? Don't you understand? I want you to **ck me. I'm not sure if I can accept you and other people at the same time, but I can't just let you go like this. I want to compete with AI Xiaoxi and the others. First of all, I have to be able to do what they can do. I'm not trying to prove how great I am, I just want to prove that I can get back what I lost. Looking at Jianghu, Qili didn't know where the strength came from, but she directly pulled Jianghu to the bed. Chapter 596. Hey, Jianghu, where are you? Come over for dinner. Picking up the phone, Jianghu listened to Huang Yunfei's voice on the other side. He couldn't help but rub his head with a headache, and then looked at Qili, who was blinking her big eyes in front of him, looking at him. But at this time, Jianghu and Qili were no longer in a pure relationship. At this time, the two of them were naked. There were some bright red bloodstains on the sheets. There was no need to say what happened just now. I can't go, I still have something to do here. Qili is very drunk and can't leave. Let's talk about it when we have time. Hearing Huang Yunfei's voice on the phone, Jianghu sighed and said to the other side of the phone. Hearing that Jianghu couldn't leave, Huang Yunfei didn't say anything. After all, they still have a long time to meet. Huang Yunfei and the others are going to the United States with Jianghu to play, so they don't care about this meal. After everything was done, Jianghu also hung up the phone. As soon as the phone was hung up, Qili instantly came up, her hands around Jianghu's neck. Her mouth was about to touch Jianghu's mouth, and her body was completely attached to Jianghu's body. Don't make trouble, your mouth reeks of alcohol. Jianghu put the phone aside and then said to Qili, You want me to brush my teeth before you kiss me? Didn't you kiss me happily just now? Then, why don't you kiss me here? Hearing what Jianghu said, Qili curled her lips, and then deliberately moved up a bit, revealing her brutality, and smiled at Jianghu. Haven't you had enough just now? You're still messing around. Looking at Qili, Jianghu also put his hand on brutal and gently pinched it, making Qili cry out. Then, she glared at Jianghu and slid her hand down his neck. Feeling Qili's movement, Jianghu patted her butt and said to her. Yes, it's not enough. It's not enough for a lifetime. I didn't know that it was such a comfortable thing before. No wonder Feng Yunshan and AI Xiaoxi, those two little sluts, took the initiative to touch you as soon as they saw you. I heard that it's very painful when women do it, but other than the initial pain, I don't feel anything now. Listening to Jiang Hai's words, Qili combed her hair behind her head, leaned on Jiang Hai's chest, and said softly while using her hand. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but mutter in his heart. If it weren't for his spiritual energy, would she not feel pain? It should be known that Qili had been suppressing her feelings for a long time just now. She was very crazy. Under such a crazy situation, every movement she made would be very painful. How could it be like now, where nothing happened? Let's do it again. Looking at Jiang Hai, Qili leaned on Jiang Hai's ear and whispered. Then, without waiting for Jiang Hai's answer, she unconsciously increased the strength of her hands. Soon, Jiang Hai was ready, and the battle began again. At the end of the battle, the sky had completely darkened. As for Qili, she looked like she was dehydrated. She was sweating all over as she lay on the bed. Her hair was stuck to her face and everywhere. Even Jiang Hai couldn't help but gasp for breath. At this time, Jiang Hai's WeChat also rang. He picked it up and saw that it was a message from AI Xiaoxi, asking if he would come back for dinner. Looking at the time, it was already 7:00 in the evening. Those two girls couldn't have been waiting for him until now, right? Let's go, I'll take you to take a shower, and then we'll go out for dinner. Since Qili had made up her mind to have such a relationship with him, Jiang Hai's originally tangled problem also relaxed a little. Patting Qili's leg, Jiang Hai said to her. And your two little lovers, forget it, I won't go, let me have a good rest, I'm not hungry. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Qili looked at him with contempt, then raised her head and said helplessly. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be angry. Without saying a word, he directly carried her out of the room and went to the bathroom next door. He turned on the water and the two played while washing. Of course, maybe because they had been here many times just now, neither Jiang Hai nor Qili said anything this time. After playing for a while, the two wiped themselves clean and walked out. This time, the smell of alcohol on the two disappeared. When Qili went to put on makeup, pack things, and put on clothes, Jiang Hai also went to the room and changed the bed sheets. At the same time, he opened the window to change the air. Now the air in the room, as long as an adult came in, he would know what had just happened here. Originally, when he was impulsive, this smell was very stimulating, but now in the case of Sage mode, it was a bit unpleasant. He connected the automatic washing machine and threw in Qili's clothes and bed sheets. Jiang Hai didn't care what material Qili's clothes were made of and directly began to stir. After all this was done, Qili also changed into a new set of clothes. Compared with the valiant look she wore during the day, this set of clothes was more like a cute little bird. Wearing it, she looked very cute. After watching Qili change her clothes, Jiang Hai and Qili also walked out of the door. But as soon as they walked out, Qili instantly took Jiang Hai's arm and leaned on Jiang Hai's side. Now she was really attached to Jiang Hai. This was also the most passionate state of love. The two went downstairs. After an afternoon of exercise, Qili might not be able to do it, but Jiang Hai had already sweated out the alcohol in his body. Now there was no alcohol in his body. So he could drive. Even if he was stopped, it wouldn't be detected. After getting in the Infinity, Jiang Hai took Qili and drove in the direction of his home. When they were about to arrive, he called AI Xiaoxi and Feng Yunchen. After the two went downstairs, they got in the car. But as soon as they entered the car, they felt that the atmosphere was a bit wrong. In the past, Jiang Hai and AI Xiaoxi would communicate with each other in the car, but the communication was mainly through words. But this time, after they got into the car, they found that Qili was touching Jiang Hai. Seeing this scene, the two women couldn't help but be stunned. What the hell is this? What are we going to eat? Seeing someone come in, Qili was not very happy, but she still turned her head and asked AI Xiaoxi and Feng Yunchen behind her. Hearing her words, the two women felt even more strange. In the past, Qili was just like a strong woman. Her words and actions were swift and decisive. She was not like the current Qili. Not only was her body soft, but her voice was also a little delicate. This was not the Qili they knew. Ugh, Director Qi, are you sick? Looking at Qili, Feng Yunshan asked strangely. What illness? Hurry up, what are we going to eat? Hearing Feng Yunshan's words, Qili couldn't help but roll her eyes at her, and then continued to ask. Hearing that Qili seemed to be a little better, Feng Yunshan was temporarily relieved. Whatever you want to eat, Jiang Hai can order it. Glancing at Jiang Hai, Feng Yunshan said. To be honest, she didn't know what to eat. Then let's go eat casserole. After thinking for a while, Jiang Hai suggested to the three women beside him. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the three women first thought for a while, and then nodded. Speaking of which, they haven't eaten this for a while. The so-called casserole, full name is casserole pancake, may be a specialty of the north. Because Jiang Hai didn't go to many places in China, he didn't know much about it, but it is very likely to be in the northeast. The way to eat it is to put soup in a casserole, just like a normal soup pot. Of course, the soup pot in Bing City also needs to add seasonings, which is different from the soups in the south. In the south, people will drink the original taste of the soup. At most, they will add some salt, because they feel that too much seasonings will destroy the original taste of the ingredients. But in the north, they will add a lot of seasonings to make the soup taste what they like. This is the difference between the north and the south. Bing City's casserole also has seasonings. There are all kinds of casseroles: mutton vermicelli, spinach, beef, tofu balls, braised meatballs, steamed meatballs, etc. This soup pot is complete with soup and vegetables. The staple food is rice or pancakes, but basically, pancakes are the main food here. The pancakes are crispy, especially when they are just made. The outside is very crispy, but the inside is very soft. It's really delicious when you bite into it. If you feel that the taste is bland, you can also soak the pancakes in the soup, so that the taste of the soup is immersed in the pancakes. When you eat the pancakes will soften, and there is also the taste of the soup. It's delicious. Also, there is a special pot of meat, which is actually braised pork, but it is stewed until it's soft. The taste is quite good. When Jiang Hai and the rest were young, they had eaten this dish. Ai Xiaoxi is not sure, but Qili and Feng Yunshan had eaten it before. But when they grew up, they had fewer chances to eat this dish. After all, things like casseroles were very expensive for a student when they were in school. It was far less suitable to eat boxed lunches and noodles. After working, they earned more money, so they didn't care about this small amount of money. They wouldn't come over to eat casseroles. That's why unless people like to eat casserole dishes, not many people will come to eat casserole dishes. Jiang Hai only remembered casserole dishes today. Since he remembered, the four of them used their phones to find a restaurant and went to eat casserole dishes. After eating casserole pancakes, the four of them breathed a sigh of relief because they are finally full. However, after the meal, the next problem was a little depressing. That was the problem of where to live. Originally, there was nothing much to say. Jiang Hai was definitely going to go back with Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi. But now the problem was that he and Qili had just had some things happen in the afternoon. If he just left like this, wouldn't it be a bit bad? But to let Qili live in his house, even if Jiang Hai used his toes to think, he knew that this was simply impossible. Chapter 597. Just as Jiang Hai thought, Qili did not intend to be open at night. On the first day with Jiang Hai, she stayed with his mistress and slept together. The plot in YY novels was not so easy to appear in the real world. Although in Jiang Hai's opinion, his current life was enough. In the end, after Jiang Hai sent Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi home, he still stayed at Qili's place at night. Of course, after eating and regaining her strength, Qili was still quite interested in the things she had not done in her 27 years. Jiang Hai was really afraid that she would get addicted. However, Jiang Hai did not refuse. He was busy all night and only slept after midnight. The next day at noon, Qili went back to her mother's place. Jiang Hai went back home, but before he could rest at home, the battle started again. One must know that Feng Yunshan returned to Bing City specifically for Jiang Hai. Since Jiang Hai came back, she had not returned home. In the end, Jiang Hai was always at Qili's place. She was unhappy, so when she came back, naturally, there was another big battle. After dinner, Jiang Hai's legs were a little weak. He went to Huang Yunfei's place to retrieve the Ferrari 488 that was lent to him for the photo shoot yesterday. Jiang Hai returned to Qili's neighborhood. After returning, he naturally could not rest. Other national holidays were time to go out and play or rest at home, but Jiang Hai's national holidays were very busy. During the day, he had to appease Feng Yunshan and Ai Xiaoxi. At night, he had to stay with Qili, and the three women seemed to be in a competition. They would not give up until they had squeezed Jiang Hai dry. Jiang Hai felt that if he was an ordinary person, he would be finished soon. It might not be long before he was finished. Fortunately, he was not an ordinary person. Sometimes, during the day or the first half of the night, he could use this as an excuse to have dinner and drink with his buddies. Otherwise, his body would be at a disadvantage. After all, this was Ice City and he could not absorb any spiritual energy here. Ever since Jiang Hai joined the United States, he had only gained 1 scale, and it was grown in Ai Xiaoxi's hometown in Lu Province. Other than that, nothing else had grown. He had to admit that the environmental problems in the country, especially in the cities, were really troublesome. Although Bingqing's environment was not particularly good, it was not particularly bad either. At least when there was no central heating, the weather outside was still good. At least one could still see the blue sky and white clouds. However, the hearse was still motionless. Unknowingly, the National Day holiday was over. In the blink of an eye, it was October 7th, tomorrow was the start of work. Jiang Hai and the rest were also ready to leave. However, when they came over, they came separately. When they left, many of them left at once. Jiang Hai, Qili, Feng Yunshan, Ai Xiaoxi, Huang Yunfei and his wife, Su Wei, and Fu Yuan, who were going to play with Jiang Hai. There were 8 people in total. Su Wei specially went to find a man who drove a large van and drove them to the airport. With Jiang Hai's help, Huang Yunfei and the rest bought tickets from Ice City to Beijing and from Beijing to the United States. Although they were economy class tickets, they were all business class tickets. Although these tickets were bought by themselves, how much did Jiang Hai spend in the past year? There was no way to forget about it. Therefore, the points from American Express were also quite high. They could spend some points to upgrade their cabin. Jiang Hai didn't need these points, so it would be better to just leave them there and do some small things. The group took the plane to Beijing. After resting for a night in Beijing, Jiang Hai, Huang Yunfei, and the rest boarded the plane from Beijing to New York. Qili, Ai Xiaoxi, and Feng Yunshan did not follow Jiang Hai this time. Qili still had to take care of her family's business. Although Ai Xiaoxi's heart had already changed, she still needed to prepare. Feng Yunshan had to follow Ai Xiaoxi, so in the end, only the 3 of them stayed. After Jiang Hai and the 3 girls were intimate for a while, they boarded the plane and prepared to return to Winthrop. On the plane back, Jiang Hai specially bought a business class ticket. The price of a business class ticket was nearly 4 times the price of a first class ticket. The service was indeed 4 times worse. The chair could not be opened completely like a bed, and there were not so many seats for him. Although it was much wider than the economy class, he was not used to sitting in the first class. Fortunately, the 4 of them could still have a good chat. As for Huang Yunfei's wife, LV Jiao, there was not much to talk about. Jiang Hai and the rest had seen this girl before. She didn't like to talk or play much. She was very quiet and didn't have any opinions. Otherwise, she wouldn't have married Huang Yunfei, who was a playboy. Watching his wife fall asleep, Huang Yunfei also whispered to Jiang Hai on the plane. "I say, the foreign woman over there, is she fun?" He carefully touched Jiang Hai and whispered to Jiang Hai. Not bad, but it mainly depends on your own level. Glancing at Huang Yunfei, Jiang Hai thought for a moment and said to him. Although Jiang Hai has not been to Winthrop and Boston to find these professional women to discuss life and persuade them to do good. But when she was in New York, the price was not high, but the effect was also quite good, and there was an unexpected gain that night. Haven't you heard of my level? I am known as the Little Prince of the Golden Gun. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei said confidently. He really hasn't tried anything like a foreign woman and winning glory for the country. Hee, number 3 screw is number 3 screw. It has nothing to do with what material it is made of. When it is put on number 8 nut, it will shake a lot. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai glanced at him disdainfully and said with a smile. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei was a little overwhelmed this time. Can't we have fun? Really? As for Su Wei and Fu Yuan, they listened to Jiang Hai's words and kept laughing there. They had considered the problem mentioned by Jiang Hai before, but they heard that it was Tinglu, so they had to give it a try. After getting off the plane, we will go directly back to my manor by car. Of course, we will take a detour on the way. If you want to take a photo of the goddess of nature or something, you can take it then. When you get to my manor, you can rest first. On the second day, I will take you out to sea. Let me tell you, I am a rich man now. I bought a yacht after Fu Yuan left. Seeing that everyone had laughed enough, Jiang Hai also talked to them about the arrangements for these days. When it came to this, Fu Yuan couldn't help but give him a middle finger. This guy is too shameless. This time, Su Wei and the others applied for the same 10-day visa as the last time Fu Yuan came. Naturally, they couldn't do anything on the first day. On the second day, Jiang Hai took them out to sea to fish. At noon, they could go diving on the coral reef. At night, they went back to hold a party. On the third day, they went to Winthrop. Of course, they couldn't play in detail. Then they went to the gun shop in the afternoon. As for riding horses, they could ride in Jiang Hai's manor. This was the itinerary of the fourth day. On the fourth day, they took a break in the afternoon. On the fifth day, Jiang Hai took them into the mountains to burn guns and hunt. On the sixth day, they went to Boston. On the seventh day, they could do whatever they wanted. On the eighth day, they took a day off. On the ninth day, they went shopping. It was impossible for them to come to the United States without bringing anything back. On the 10th day, they returned to New York and flew back to Wuxia. But this time, Jiang Hai didn't go back with them. For this arrangement, everyone was very much in agreement. While talking and chatting, the few of them unknowingly became sleepy. Jiang Hai also put down his chair and slept. Anyway, it was just one night, so it was fine to deal with it. When they woke up, their backs would definitely be sore. However, the plane had already arrived in New York at this time. After getting off the plane, Jiang Hai's shield had been waiting in the parking lot of the airport for a long time. Jiang Hai didn't expect that he would stay so long this time. However, it didn't matter if he stayed for a long time. Looking at Jiang Hai's new car, Fu Yuan, Huang Yunfei, and Su Wei all picked up their mobile phones and began to take pictures. To be honest, this car looked really scary and they were also very tempted. Even Huang Yunfei was thinking that if Jiang Hai's car was in China, he would use this car as a wedding car. It would really beat the hundreds of streets like Bentley. If Jiang Hai knew his idea, he would probably refuse. It was not because he was reluctant. After all, it was just a wedding car. He had nothing to be reluctant about, but it was still because of that sentence. What car, what job? Although people in Huaxia didn't pay much attention to these things, after all, the wedding was a Western style. It was not good to make a mess. Jiang Hai's shield had no problem sitting these 5 people. After everyone got in the car, Jiang Hai also started the engine. A good car was indeed a good car. It had been basking in the dust here for half a month, but it was still very strong. Jiang Hai stepped on the accelerator and drove out of the airport. He went to a nearby car wash. After the car was automatically washed, they set off again. After all, in the past half a month, although the car was fine, there was a thick layer of dust on it. After all, this was an airport, so the dust was very heavy. After the car was cleaned, Jianghu deliberately made a half circle around New York. For example, the more famous Statue of Liberty, Fifth Avenue, Times Square, and so on. He let everyone take a look at them from afar. After making a circle in New York, they got on the National Highway and went straight to Boston. Originally, it took more than 2 hours to go from Boston to New York. From Boston to Jianghu's manor, it was about half an hour. However, after Jianghu made a circle, the plane arrived at 3:30 in the afternoon. It was almost 8:00 when they went home. After walking for nearly 5 hours, when the car came to a stop, everyone got out of the car and stretched with all their might. Although they saw a lot of scenery along the way, to be honest, it was really too tiring. Jianghu, you're back. You're so slow. At this moment, in front of Jianghu's villa, a crisp voice sounded. Then Huang Yunfei and others looked over and saw a beautiful woman standing in front of the villa at this time. They were all stunned. Chapter 598. What's going on? Looking at the row of beautiful women in front of them, everyone here was a little confused. The only one who was mentally prepared was Fu Yuan, because when Fu Yuan came last time, he had already seen Aphrodite and Jianghu's 2 daughters, Daliana and Marian, but he had not seen Bernice and Lilia. He had to admit that Bernice and Lilia, these 2 Easterners, were more in line with their aesthetic views. Bernice's strong appearance was somewhat similar to Qi Li, and Lilia's pure white elf-like appearance was even more pitiful. Let me introduce you. First, this is Fu Yuan. In addition to you, Daliana and the others have seen him. This is Su Wei. This is Huang Yunfei. This is Huang Yunfei's wife, LV Jiao. Then I'll introduce you to this side. This is Daliana. This is Marian. This is my daughter. This is Bernice. This is Lilia. They are also my guests. This is Aphrodite Arnold. This is Dana Taylor. This is Hilda Leonard. This is Peggy Hall. This is Sheila Rodney. This is Ohilia Clive. This is Bridget Nelson. This is Janice Joy. They are my, Looking at everyone's puzzled eyes, Jianghu also introduced them, but when it came to Aphrodite and the others, Jianghu couldn't help but be a little speechless. Looking at Aphrodite and the others, Jianghu didn't know what to say. Because how should he introduce them? Say that they are his women? It's a little forced, but say that they are his workers? Isn't that a bit too heartless? Then what are they? Friends? Well, maybe this is a good way to put it. We are Jianghu's servants, please come in, the guest rooms and dinner are ready. But before Jianghu could say anything, Aphrodite smiled and said. Hearing Aphrodite's words, Jianghu couldn't help but stare blankly. He looked at Aphrodite, but Aphrodite just winked at him. It was obvious that she had been prepared for this address for a long time. Don't listen to their nonsense. These are my friends. All right, let's go in. However, Jianghu didn't go along with her words. Although this was to give him face, Jianghu's heart was still somewhat apologetic. He waved his hand and said something to Su Wei and the others, then led everyone into his villa. However, after walking in, except for Fu Yuan, Su Wei and Huang Yunfei felt a sense of confusion. While they were going in, Jianghu also tugged at Aphrodite. Why didn't he see Azalina? She hasn't been feeling well these past few days, so she's resting in her room. Hearing Jianghu's words, Aphrodite whispered. Not feeling well? Hearing Aphrodite's explanation, Jianghu was a little puzzled, but Aphrodite smiled and didn't explain more. Because they had never eaten with so many beautiful women around them, and the place where they ate was actually a standalone villa. To be honest, it was almost like a dream. At this time, after they entered the house, they unconsciously tightened their bodies and looked at everything around them. Seeing their reaction, Jianghu also chuckled. It was quite good to show them his power. Okay, let's serve the dishes. When everyone was seated, Bernice also shouted towards the kitchen. Then Aphrodite and the others went to the kitchen and began to serve the dishes that had been prepared long ago. Although these dishes were not all made by Little Ya, they were almost all guided by Little Ya. Her craftsmanship was not too bad. As soon as the first dish was served, Huang Yunfei's eyes widened. Because the first dish was a huge Boston lobster. Although they saw Fu Yuan showing off in their circle of friends before, it was the first time they saw it in real life. Looking at that huge lobster, they couldn't help but swallow their saliva. This thing, how heavy is it? It's more than 20 jin. Pointing to the lobster in front of him, Huang Yunfei said with a trembling voice. He is a rich man, and he has basically eaten everything. After all, those equipment dealers, pharmaceutical representatives, and the like, in order to let them use their things, naturally, they have to treat them, eat, take a bath, whatever the dragon is, and the quality is quite good. So he has eaten lobster before, but such a big lobster, let alone eat it, he has never even seen it before. This one is 18. 5 jin in total. Hearing Huang Yunfei's words, most of the people at the dinner table were a little confused. After all, he spoke Mandarin, but Bernice, Lilia, Delina, and Marian could still understand him. So Bernice said, answering his doubts. Hearing Bernice's words, Huang Yunfei couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. 18, 5 jin, that is to say, this lobster is 37 jin? 37 jin. It's not 3. 5 jin. Thinking of this, he immediately took out his mobile phone and began to take pictures. Of course, except for him, the others will not be polite. Such a big lobster, if they don't take pictures of it, they won't be able to sleep at night. Jianghu, you are too polite. Such a big lobster, my God. After the shooting, Su Wei awkwardly said. They came here to play, but they didn't come here to take advantage of Jianghu. Although they said that Jianghu would take care of the food and drink, but Jianghu gave them such a big gift, which made them somewhat unable to sit still. How much would this thing cost? It's okay. Although the size of this lobster is not small, I still have a lot of it. At least, I can't finish it. Looking at Su Wei and the others who were a little embarrassed, Jianghu said with a smile. He does have a lot of these things. Hearing Jianghu's words, the people here couldn't help but sigh with emotion. What a terrible guy. However, before they could react, the second dish was served. Once they saw it, they couldn't stay calm anymore. Because the second dish was abalones, all of which were abnormally large and top-grade abalones. Each of them was lying on the plate, stripped of their shells, and cut with a knife to form a grid that looked like kidney flowers. Braised abalone. When this thing was served, Jianghu's appetite was somewhat moved. Needless to say, Huang Yunfei and the others picked up their mobile phones again. It was simply intolerable if they didn't take pictures of this thing. However, just as they finished taking pictures of the abalones, the sea cucumbers were served. These sea cucumbers were all abnormally big, and naturally attracted a lot of attention. After the lobster, abalone, and sea cucumbers, it was the beef. The beef was divided into 2 parts. The first part was stewed beef, and the second part was fried steak. When these things were served, it naturally attracted a lot of attention. Because they all knew that Jianghu's beef was not ordinary. It was sold for a few thousand yuan per catty in China. Now, they could eat as much as they wanted. What could be better than this? After the beef, there was mutton, pork, prawns, crabs, cod. Jianghu had a lot of delicious food here. Although many of the fish were not ripe yet, when the large yellow croakers, Yangtze swordfish, and even Chinese bahaba fish matured, how terrifying would Jianghu's dining table be? Even so, salmon, blue-finned golden spear, and the like were not on the dining table now. Just the 16 dishes on the table were enough to dazzle the eyes of these people. After the last dish was served, Jianghu ordered everyone to move their chopsticks instantly. They first ate the abalone, then the lobster, then the sea cucumbers, the steak, and so on. They were really stuffing food directly into their mouths. These good things were not so easy to eat in China. Looking at Huang Yunfei, Su Wei, Fu Yuan, and even Huang Yunfei's wife, LV Jiao, Aphrodite and the others who sat down to eat at Jiang Hai's request couldn't help but smile. This reminded them of when they first arrived here. Perhaps because they felt the laughter of these people, Fu Yuan and Su Wei couldn't help but stop sweeping. Then, they smiled a little awkwardly and gently pushed Huang Yunfei beside them. Huang Yunfei also felt that it might not be good to eat like this. After all, they were in front of so many beautiful women. In their eyes, Jiang Hai was really surrounded by beautiful women. Aphrodite and the others had a unique exotic charm that added a lot of points to them. In addition, these girls were not bad to begin with. Coupled with Jiang Hai's spiritual energy transformation, their appearance, figure, and temperament had some qualitative leaps and bounds. As for Delina and Marian, they were naturally two beauties who had already begun to take shape. As for Bernice and Xiaoya, they were already very good-looking. When they sat there, one looked like an iceberg female doctor while the other looked like an ice fairy. They couldn't help but want to take a few more glances. Being surrounded by so many beautiful women was actually quite stressful. Especially Huang Yunfei's wife, LV Jiao. In fact, LV Jiao's appearance was not bad. Although ordinary people were not particularly good-looking, they were not ugly either. According to the standards of domestic internet celebrities, she could be given 75 points. But here, it seemed like she couldn't even pass the passing mark. She was like an ugly duckling in a flock of white swans. The pressure was considerable. But fortunately, these delicious food diverted her attention. In front of delicious food, pressure and whatnot were temporarily put aside. In this way, the three men deliberately restrained themselves and finished the meal. But even if they restrained themselves, they still ate a lot. After eating all the food, Aphrodite and the others packed up and were about to leave. But before leaving, Aphrodite deliberately asked Jiang Hai's ear if she needed to arrange for them to come over tonight. Considering that they had been sitting in business class for the whole day, Jiang Hai was also a little tired, so she told them to talk about it tomorrow. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, Aphrodite first took Huang Yunfei and his wife, Su Wei, and Fu Yuan to the room that was already prepared for them. The room was also Jiang Hai's standard guest room. In the room, there was air conditioning, a big bed, a TV, a wardrobe, a bathroom, and so on. It could be said that it was not worse than the big bedroom in an ordinary hotel. Moreover, there was a hint of the smell of home. After everyone entered the room, Su Wei and Fu Yuan first took the photos in their phones and showed them off. Then, they took a shower and went to bed. As for Huang Yunfei and LV Jiao, they also packed up and prepared to rest. But lying on the bed, LV Jiao looked at Huang Yunfei strangely. She was really curious. Was Huang Yunfei's friend really like what he said? I say, this friend of yours, is he really a cattle breeder? LV Jiao asked strangely as she stuffed herself into Huang Yunfei's arms. Yes, but I never thought that his life would be so extravagant. Hearing his wife's words, Huang Yunfei couldn't help but nod. Thinking back to the scene he saw tonight, he still couldn't get over it. Chapter 599. What was a man's dream? Waking up to control the world, getting drunk and lying on a beauty's lap. Of course, this was just a dream. Which man didn't watch TV when he was young and fantasize about being an emperor? In today's society, it was impossible to get drunk and control the world. After all, in the entire imperial court, there was only one person who had the final say. One person among the 3 billion. Obviously, they didn't have the brain or the life. But getting drunk and lying on a beauty's lap could still be considered, but unfortunately, this wasn't something that ordinary men could do. After all, the beauties now were all expensive. Of course, this didn't refer to some special industries. A good woman, beautiful, gentle, slender, diligent and thrifty. These were all possible. The problem was that such a good woman, if she didn't go to film, then the person who pursued her would be unfaithful. It wasn't an easy thing to get drunk and lie on her lap. At least, Su Wei and the others didn't have this idea. Originally, Jianghu didn't have this idea, but now he disdained to get drunk and lie down. After returning to his room, Jianghu looked at the photos posted by the three people. After leaving a comment, he went to bed. Although he slept for a long time on the plane, to be honest, he didn't sleep well. It was more comfortable to sleep in his own bed. Although he was used to sleeping on a soft bed in the past half a month, sleeping on this white jade bed was indeed a bit uncomfortable, but it was still okay. The night was silent. Early the next morning, Jianghu got up, yawned, cleaned up the room, and walked out of the door. But when he came out, he found that Fu Yuan and the others had been waiting outside for a long time. At this time, they were standing in Jianghu's parking lot, taking photos with Jianghu's luxury cars. Jianghu had a lot of good cars here, such as Rolls-Royce, Battle Shield, F-750, and so on. These cars would attract a lot of attention in China. Now, they could take photos as they pleased. They could even sit inside and take photos. Such opportunities were rare. They're all up. Rubbing his eyes and looking at the people outside, Jianghu whispered. At this time, Bernice, who had finished her exercise in the gym, also came out. She glanced at the people outside and said to Jianghu, "Oh, your friends, they can get up much earlier than you." They got up at about 6 o'clock. After coming to the gym to take a look, they went out to take photos. Bernice said as she wiped her sweat. The weather outside had been getting colder recently. Although Winthrop's weather was not as cold as Bing City's, it was best to do other sports indoors except for running outside. Hearing her words, Jianghu glanced at her and found that she was still wearing her usual exercise clothes. The pants and shirt perfectly outlined her body. No wonder Fu Yuan and the others, who were originally visiting the villa, ran outside. You should wear more clothes when there are guests at home. Looking at Bernice's clothes, Jianghu said with some displeasure. What? Are you jealous? Hearing Jianghu's jealous words, Bernice couldn't help but look at him and said with a smile. Why would I be jealous? I'm afraid you will be taken advantage of. Rolling his eyes at Bernice, Jianghu pushed her directly into her room, then shook his head. Jealous? Maybe, maybe not, who knows? You guys got up so early. Putting aside these thoughts for the time being, Jianghu walked down the stairs and then walked out of the room. Hey, you finally got up. We remembered that we were going out to play today. We didn't sleep much. Seeing Jianghu walk out, Su Wei greeted him immediately and then said with a smile. He had never gone out to sea before. In fact, it wasn't only him, Huang Yunfei and his wife also haven't experienced it. When Fu Yuan came last time, although he went out to sea, he was only on Jianghu's boat. He also hasn't been on a proper yacht. Now, he is very anxious. Look at you guys. Have breakfast first, then let's go. Looking at their eager look, Jianghu said with a smile, then led everyone to have a simple breakfast. Jianghu has been here for a year, and he is used to the breakfast here. Although it is not as refreshing as tofu pudding and youtiao, the breakfast here is still good. A big bowl of cheddar soup, coupled with toast, milk, and fried ham and eggs, tastes very good. After breakfast and cleaning up, Jianghu took the 3 men and 1 woman to the beach on 2 off-road motorcycles. Driving by Jianghu's river, looking at the river beside him and the grassland further away, and the herd of cattle and sheep that had been released by Robbins Garcia on the grassland, to be honest, such a beautiful scenery is really refreshing. Jianghu, I didn't expect your place to be so beautiful. Looking at everything in the distance, Huang Yunfei couldn't help but say with emotion. That's right. If this was my territory, even if you gave me the position of mayor, I would. Well, would still change. Hearing Huang Yunfei's words, Su Wei also followed up, but halfway through, he realized that he couldn't resist the temptation. Hearing what they said, Jianghu couldn't help but laugh. Mayor? If it were him, he wouldn't change. Because this is what he is pursuing. Along the way, he looked at the grassland and then at the forest. From time to time, some pheasants, hares, and birds flew by at low altitude. This scene is a perfect fusion of nature and modernity. After settling down and looking at it, it is really a different feeling. But unfortunately, Jianghu didn't give them too much time to be artistic. Soon, the two off-road motorcycles had already arrived at the dock. "Boss, you are back." Seeing that the motorcycles were parked, Edward Anderson and the others walked out of the cabin at the dock. Seeing that it was Jianghu and his friends, Edward Anderson couldn't help but smile and say. Hearing his words, Jianghu also waved at him. After parking the motorcycles, he walked over. "These are my friends from Wuxia. Today, they are going out to sea on my yacht. Please help me prepare." Looking at Edward Anderson, Jianghu said to him. Hearing that Jianghu was going out to sea, Edward Anderson waved his hand, and Tommy Charles, Eleanor Cece, and Andrew Christian all came out of the room. Now, Marlon Rupert and Belle Lester have already gone to patrol. Knowing that Jianghu was going out to sea, they also began to check radio, satellite positioning, fuel gauge, various instruments, fresh water, fuel, etc. Of course, in addition to some food. Seeing that Jianghu's 3 men were busy, Su Wei and others were too embarrassed to watch from the side, so they also went to help. Jianghu and Edward Anderson chatted about the situation after he left. After learning that their seafood consumption reached a new high in November, Jianghu also smiled. This was all within the scope of his plan. In addition to the consumption, he also got a piece of bad news. That is, someone took a fancy to Winthrop. Of course, that person didn't say that he wanted to come here to be the mayor or buy this place directly, but he took a fancy to the location here and wanted to build a factory here. Hearing this, Jianghu frowned. Edward Anderson didn't know what kind of factory it was, but in Jianghu's view, any factory must have some problems. Now that the town's tourism industry was developing well, there was no need to rely on these things to make money. After all, in his view, any factory must cause pollution to the atmosphere, water, and land. Using the present to overdraft the future, unless Jianghu's brain was damaged, not to mention others, Jianghu would absolutely not agree to it. But what he thought, Mayor Wallace probably thought of it too, so he wasn't very worried. After chatting with Edward Anderson for a while, Jianghu's boat was also ready. After informing Edward Anderson, Jianghu got on the boat, started the engine, and sailed towards the sea. As soon as the boat left the port, Su Wei, Fu Yuan, and Huang Yunfei on the boat screamed excitedly. Although they had never been on a boat before, it was their first time going out to sea on such a yacht. When they were under the boat, they had already taken a lot of photos. Now that they were on the boat and going out to sea, they directly took photos. Especially Huang Yunfei and his wife, LV Jiao. No woman wouldn't be tempted by these materialistic things. LV Jiao, who was very quiet yesterday, was very excited today. After Jianghu set the route, he walked out of the cabin and looked at the excited people on the deck. Jianghu couldn't help but laugh. He turned back to the kitchen and took out a box of cold beer. Jianghu didn't know what to say. He went back to the kitchen and took out a box of cold beer. "Wow, Jianghu, you are so generous. How can there be no beer in such a beautiful scenery?" Looking at the beer, Fu Yuan ran over with a smile, picked up a bottle of beer, opened it with a lighter, and then raised his head to drink. But he was stopped by Jianghu. He was drinking clear beer. This kind of beer was very light and refreshing, but the alcohol content was not small. And drinking this kind of beer, in addition to being cold, it was best to add some lemon juice. The taste was quite good. The last time he came, although Fu Yuan also drank this kind of beer, Jianghu didn't drink it at that time, let alone him. This was also something he learned after going to the Caribbean Sea. Seeing Jianghu cut a lemon and then squeeze a little lemon juice into it, Fu Yuan shook the bottle with some doubts and then took a sip. People in Bing City liked to drink beer, and so did Fu Yuan. As soon as the beer entered his stomach, Fu Yuan's eyes lit up. Why is this wine so delicious? Fu Yuan asked curiously as he looked at the wine bottle in front of him that was written in a foreign language. Of course, otherwise I wouldn't drink this kind of thing. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai also laughed. Chapter 600. Jiang Hai only liked to drink two kinds of beer, Corona and Budweiser. Both of these beers were rather light, and there was almost no bitterness in them at all. Paired with lemon juice, it was like a cocktail. The taste was about the same, but there was a bit of steam. It was like a carbonated alcoholic drink. It was different from the so-called pineapple beer. The taste was quite good, and there was a bit of alcohol in it. At least, it was not worse than ordinary beer. Ordinary beer's original juice concentration was about 9% to 11%. This kind of beer was more than 11%. Although it was only a little more than 10%, it meant that its alcohol content was not lower than ordinary beer. But this kind of beer was better than ordinary beer. Of course, this was not absolute. If Jiang Hai's father's generation drank it, they would say, "How is this good?" It was like water, and there was no alcohol taste at all. In this regard, Jiang Hai had nothing to say. For example, Edward Anderson and Robbins Garcia did not like to drink this kind of beer. They preferred to drink Cowboy Song's homebrewed barley beer, but Bell and the others liked to drink this. After Jiang Hai tasted it once, he stored a lot of this kind of beer at home. There were more choices in the United States than in China. He could buy beer from almost all the countries in the world here. The famous German and Wuxia beers were available here. But when it comes to drinking, he still likes to drink these two kinds. Hearing Jiang Hai and Fu Yuan's conversation, Huang Yunfei and Su Wei also came over. After opening a bottle, they took a sip and couldn't help but nod secretly. There was no taste, and it was particularly refreshing. After adding some lemon juice, their eyes unconsciously widened. It was really delicious. Looking at Huang Yunfei's appearance, LV Jiao also walked over curiously and took a sip. Then she also liked the taste. But she was different from Huang Yunfei and Jiang Hai. After all, she was a woman, so she just held a bottle and drank. It's boring to just drink and look at the sky. Let's fish for lunch. Jiang Haibei finished a bottle of beer very quickly. Then, he looked at his buddies and suggested to them. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, these people were a little eager to try. It was indeed not good to come here without fishing. So they went to the cabin and took out Jiang Hai's fishing rod. Jiang Hai only put a total of 3 fishing rods here, one for each of them. Then they put on the fake bait, which was specially bought by Jiang Hai after the night fishing, and started fishing. Jiang Hai, don't you want to fish? Looking at the 3 people holding a fishing rod, under the command of Fu Yuan, who once fished at sea, they started fishing. Well, Fu Yuan also fished here because of Jiang Hai. Except for him, no one else has fished at sea, but it seems that they are really good at it. And LV Jiao stood beside Huang Yunfei and looked at Jiang Hai standing next to him. She couldn't help but ask him. In her opinion, her husband, the 3 of them snatched Jiang Hai's fishing rod and left Jiang Hai out there in the sun. Fishing. Hearing LV Jiao's question, Jiang Hai smiled and began to arrange the fishing line around him. But you don't have a fishing rod, how can you fish? Yunfei, give the fishing rod to Jiang Hai. Hearing Jiang Hai say that he wants to fish, LV Jiao couldn't help but ask him with some doubts. Then she turned to look at Huang Yunfei and asked him to give up a fishing rod first. But now Huang Yunfei is in a good mood, directly asking him to return the fishing rod. He is somewhat unwilling. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, several people here can't help but frown and look at Jiang Hai in unison. No need for fishing rods, let them use these things, I can catch more than them without a fishing rod. Especially Huang Yunfei, who kept the fishing rod, looked at Jiang Hai and said loudly, "You're bragging, you don't need a fishing rod, let me see." Hearing his words, Jiang Hai looked at him with contempt, then took a fake bait and hung it on his fishing line, then tied a lot of colorful stripes on the fishing line. Under their gaze, Jiang Hai directly threw the fishing line into the sea. You don't know it, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Today I will open your eyes. Looking at Jiang Hai pulling the fishing line and preparing to fish, several people were a little confused. Jiang Hai is not crazy. And Jiang Hai actually dared to say such words at this time? I think you are really, damn, you really took the bait. Su Wei, who was the closest to Jiang Hai, was just about to mock Jiang Hai, but he didn't expect that Jiang Hai suddenly began to reel in the fishing line, and he saw a fish jumping out of the water on the fishing line in the distance. Where? Really? Damn, what the hell is this? Does this sea look at people? Following Su Wei's strange cry, several other people came over and watched Jiang Hai quickly reel in the fishing line. And when the fishing line was completely retracted, a fish about the size of a palm was already jumping on the fake bait. What kind of fish is this? Looking at the palm-sized fish, Fu Yuan was also a little confused and asked Jiang Hai. This is a small tuna fish, it is useless, it doesn't taste good, this is used as bait. Hearing his words, Jiang Hai also smiled and explained to him. Yes, now Jiang Hai is using the fishing technique that he was shocked by the local girl when he was in the Caribbean. A fishing line, some colored rope, and a hook can catch fish. Compared to this kind of fishing method, using a fishing rod to fish was indeed much more lowly. Of course, professionals still have to use a fishing rod because only a fishing rod can catch big fish. This kind of fishing, except for catching some brainless carnivorous fish, has no effect on some smart big fish. But this thing is enough to scare Fu Yuan and the others. After watching Jiang Hai take the small tuna fish off the hook and throw it into the tank next to him, the four people stopped fishing and just looked at the fish. However, Jiang Hai didn't stay idle, he threw the fishing line into the sea again, waiting for the fish to bite the bait. In less than a minute, another small tuna fish took the bait. Now Jiang Hai and the others are still in Jiang Hai's sea area. Because Jiang Hai's sea area is too rich in spiritual energy, it attracted a large number of fish. Although some of these fish are cruising around the world, when the fish enter this area, they are reluctant to leave, such as those tuna fish. In addition to these fish, some other fish in the sea will also be reluctant to leave after swimming over and take root here. This is also why Jiang Hai is not worried about the food problem of Big Fool, the 14 dolphins, and his newly collected Roger, king sour squid. Because these foreign species are abnormally rich, it is enough for them to eat. And those large carnivores, such as sharks, are attracted by these foreign species. In front of a king sour squid, a sand tiger shark that is bigger than a great white shark, plus a shark that is also not small, plus 14 dolphins, those sharks have no other choice but to run away. So imagine, when Jiang Hai starts fishing next year, what will his harvest be like? It's a little scary just thinking about it. This kind of small tuna fish is originally a warm and tropical species, but Jiang Hai also has a lot of them. About half an hour or so, Jiang Hai has already caught more than 20 such small tuna fish. Seeing Jiang Hai constantly pulling up the fish, Huang Yunfei and the others also put aside their initial curiosity and wanted to go fishing, but this thing also requires skill. With their mediocre skills, it is not easy to catch these fish. In half an hour, only Fu Yuan, who has fished before, caught a sea bass by sheer luck. But in Jiang Hai's view, this fish should be used as bait because this little guy is too small, about 10 centimeters. But Fu Yuan was so excited that he hugged the fish and took a photo. As a result, he accidentally let the fish jump into the water. Okay, it's almost done. After calculating in his mind, Jiang Hai said after pulling back the last small tuna fish. What? You don't want to fish anymore? Didn't you say that this kind of fish is not delicious? Hearing Jiang Hai say that it's almost done, Dian Yunfei and the others were still not satisfied, but at sea, they would not question Jiang Hai, so they just asked with some doubts. No, you guys go ahead. I mean, these small fish are almost done. These fish are not edible. I will use them to get some edible fish for you. After Jiang Hai finished speaking, he smiled and took back the fishing line. Then he took down the fake bait and scooped up a small tuna. He used his tactical dagger and easily killed the fish with a few cuts. Then he removed the fins and scratched some wounds on them. Then, he picked up the fish, hung it on the hook tied to the fishing line, and threw the line into the sea. After that, they just had to wait. The fish they were going to catch this time were bigger carnivorous fish, which were much more difficult to catch than small tuna fish. Seeing Jiang Hai's actions, although Huang Yunfei and the others didn't say anything, they were all thinking in their hearts. What kind of fish is Jiang Hai trying to catch? But they looked at Jiang Hai suspiciously for a long time, and there was no movement from Jiang Hai's side. Gradually, they stopped paying attention to Jiang Hai's side. But at this moment, Jiang Hai suddenly moved. He quickly put away the fishing line. As soon as they saw Jiang Hai's actions, everyone focused their attention on him. However, they couldn't see what Jiang Hai was trying to pull. When the fishing line was about 3 or 4 meters away from the ship's deck, they could see that on the other end of the fishing line, there was a slender fish, almost a meter long, struggling to pull the line. Fish, what a big fish! Looking at the big fish under the water, Biyao couldn't help but exclaim excitedly. Jiang Hai also gestured to everyone, and in an instant, he pulled the fish directly to the platform. After the fish reached the platform, it began to struggle violently, wanting to jump back into the sea, but even so, it didn't open its mouth. Chapter 601. What the hell, what kind of fish is this? It's so big and it looks so fierce. Looking at the struggling fish, Fu Yuan couldn't help but come over and wanted to catch the fish to take a look, but Jiang Hai stopped him one step ahead of him. You don't want your finger, you dare to touch it when you don't know what kind of fish it is. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Fu Yuan was a little confused. Isn't it just a fish? Although it's a little big, it's not big enough to bite off my finger. This is barracuda, also known as sea wolf. Look at these fangs. This fish has a strong vitality and is quite ferocious. If you touch its mouth before it dies, it definitely won't mind tasting human flesh. Looking at everyone's puzzled eyes, Jiang Hai said to them, then he picked up the stick that had been prepared long ago and directly hit the fish to death. Then he opened the fish's mouth and took out the small tuna that had been bitten by it, but there was no way to use it. He directly threw it into the sea to feed the fish. To catch new fish, he needs to change the bait. What the hell, this thing is so fierce? I want to hold it and take a picture. Come on, Su Wei, help me take a picture. Hearing Jiang Hai's introduction, Fu Yuan's eyes couldn't help but shine. He picked up the fish with a serious face and asked Su Wei to take a picture for him with a smile. Of course, after he finished taking pictures, Su Wei, Huang Yunfei, and Biyao all took pictures. For them, this fish, which is almost 1.5 meters long, is a big fish. Even if they didn't catch it, they were very happy. After everyone took pictures, they also put the fish in a box full of ice next to them according to Jiang Hai's instructions. According to Jiang Hai, this is called ice fresh, and it will taste good later. After dealing with the fish, Su Wei and the others continued to fish, but they put more of their thoughts on Jiang Hai. They are waiting to see if Jiang Hai can catch more and better fish. This time, they didn't have to wait too long. After about 10 minutes, Jiang Hai began to quickly reel in the line again. As soon as they saw Jiang Hai reel in the line, the people here surrounded him. Jiang Hai's reel in the line was very fast, even faster than the reel in with a fishing rod. Not long after, the other end of the line appeared on the sea level. This time, Jiang Hai didn't catch a barracuda, but a sea bass. It's the same species as the one Fu Yuan caught just now, but it's much worse in size. If Jiang Hai's fish is his grandson, then this fish is his grandfather. Although it hasn't been pulled out of the water yet, the fish on Jiang Hai's side has begun to show its size. The one caught by Fu Yuan is only about 10 centimeters long, but the one caught by Jiang Hai is almost no shorter than the barracuda just now. It's about 1 meter long. Otherwise, it would be impossible to eat a whole small tuna. This fish is not like the barracuda. Its body is slender. This fish looks a bit like the fathead fish. It has a big head, a big mouth, and a wide body. Jianghu looked at the fish and without saying a word, he directly threw it on the platform. Then he directly killed it with a stick and lifted the fish up. With this lift, Jianghu couldn't help nodding with satisfaction. This fish is less than 1 meter long. It may be a little short. The weight is about 15 kilograms, which is about 30 kilograms. The difference is not big. The barracuda is about 20 kilograms. The two fish are 50 kilograms. After removing the head, the internal organs, and the bones, more than 20 kilograms of meat can be obtained, which is enough for Jianghu and others to eat. After all, this is his own fishing ground. Jianghu doesn't plan to fish too much. These two fish are enough. After this fish was put on the table, it naturally attracted a large wave of photos and showing off. After everyone took photos, Jianghu also poured the rest of the small tuna back into the sea, and then began to clean up with the two fish. Removing the head, bleeding, scraping the scales, and removing the internal organs. After a series of things were done, Jianghu also began to deal with the meat. These sea fish have a big bone. Unlike the river fish which have many small burrs, these sea fish don't have many bones. He went up and cut down the back of the fish, and a fish bone was shaved out. Of course, there is still a lot of meat on the fish bone, but Jianghu disdains to eat this meat. After staying in the United States for a long time, he has developed the habit of wasting food. Holding 4 fish, Jianghu went up to marinate the fish. Because of Jianghu, Huang Yunfei and the others didn't want to fish. At least, they didn't want to fish today. After putting away the fishing rod, they went to the upper deck. In the living room, they watched TV, drank beer, and watched Jianghu marinate the fish there. This made these 4 people quite happy. The TV in Jianghu's yacht is a satellite TV, and it can also be received by domestic stations. Of course, the premise is that it has to be on the satellite. Some local stations can't receive it. Watching Wuxia on a yacht in the United States, enjoying the sea breeze, drinking beer, and waiting for delicious food, is there anything more beautiful than this? Not long after, Jianghu finished marinating the fish. Then, he took a charcoal stove to the deck. Today, they are going to roast the fish. This time, they can't be lazy. They also gathered there and got busy. Those who burned the charcoal, those who took the tables and chairs, and those who cleaned the bowls and chopsticks cleaned the bowls and chopsticks. There is strength in numbers. Not long after, they are almost done. After the charcoal is burned, it needs to be burned for a while before it can be roasted. Jianghu and the others also took advantage of this time to take a look at the yacht's steering room. After everything is done, Jianghu and the others took the marinated fish and the beef from home to the deck and began to roast. Although these fish are not raised by Jianghu, after all, they have absorbed the spiritual energy of Jianghu, so when they are roasted, the taste of the meat is quite good. Although it can't be compared to the taste of beef and lobster, in terms of fish alone, the taste of these 2 big fish is already not worse than the general yellowfin golden spear. Of course, the difference in price is very big. However, for Huang Yunfei and the others, these fish are also very delicious. Some words of praise are constantly brushed in his circle of friends. Many people are envious, jealous, and hateful. Of course, what they hate is that they can't replace them to go there to play. Jianghu, your life is too corrupt. After taking a sip of beer, Huang Yunfei couldn't help but sigh. In terms of making money, he naturally can't make as much as Jianghu, but he is also a person who doesn't lack money. However, compared with his daily work, he is really far behind Jianghu. The gap is already not easy to describe with words. Living in such a big villa every day, surrounded by beautiful women, beasts in the mountains, cattle and sheep on the land, seafood in the sea, he can eat whatever he wants. If he is not happy, he will drive the yacht to the sea. At home, he can also ride a horse, play with guns and so on. This kind of life is really enviable to others. A year ago, Who would have thought that Jianghu would be like this? At that time, these brothers also thought that Jianghu's greatest development in the future may be that he may reconcile with Qi Li and then go to Qi Li's company to do something. Who would have thought that he would actually live such a godlike life? After listening to his words, Jianghu also chuckled. In fact, not only him, but Jianghu also didn't think that he would live such a godlike life one day. But sometimes, things are so sudden. Who would have thought? The group of people had a very happy lunch. If they couldn't eat, they would wash it with water and then throw it directly into the sea. These fish will not be wasted in the sea. After all, they are not going home to feed ornamental fish. There is not much difference between raw and cooked meat. After everything was done, Jianghu and the others returned to the dock around 2:00 in the afternoon. Then, they changed to a small boat and went directly to the coral reef. In the afternoon, Jianghu arranged for them to snorkel. They certainly can't do real diving. After all, they haven't learned how to do it, and Jianghu can't take them. However, it didn't matter if they were snorkeling. Ever since the sea was filled with spirit energy, plankton grew the most. The coral polyps, which fed on plankton, grew faster after eating plankton that contains spirit energy. Since March of this year, Jianghu's coral group has almost doubled in size. Now, not only are there many coral groups in the sea about 10 meters deep, but there are also coral groups in the sea between 2 and 5 meters deep. The only pity is that these corals are still mainly gray and not beautiful at all. Jianghu has already prepared to wait until next summer to introduce some colorful corals to make his underwater world colorful. Because the waterline on this side of the coral reef is very shallow, large ships can't sail over, but small boats can pass through unimpeded. After Jianghu and the others arrived, everyone changed into their respective swimsuits in the cabin. They also prepared glasses and snorkeling tubes. Everything is ready. Jianghu also told them what to pay attention to when they go into the water. Scorpions and sea snakes were definitely not to be touched. Jellyfish were definitely not to be touched. Sea anemones were definitely not to be touched. Sea slugs were definitely not to be touched. Colorful fishes were definitely not to be touched. Even if he saw a large reef cave, there might be eels or sharks inside. That was definitely not to be touched. After repeated reminders and confirming all the problems, Jianghu and the others went into the water. Looking at the gray coral world on the surface of the water, Jianghu didn't feel anything, but Huang Yunfei and the others were very excited. Fortunately, they still remembered Jianghu's words to stay away from those dangers. At most, they would chase some small fish to play with. After playing here for about 2 hours, these people climbed onto the boat and returned to the dock, ready to go back for dinner. This was because they had eaten Jianghu's food in the past 2 days. Otherwise, with their original weak bodies, they estimated that they couldn't even crawl after playing for 2 hours. They wouldn't be as unsatisfied as they were now. Chapter 602. Jiang, I missed you so much. Dana Taylor threw herself into Jianghu's arms and looked at Jianghu with an intoxicated expression. Then, without waiting for Jianghu to react, she hugged Jianghu's neck and kissed him again. Aphrodite did the same. She took the initiative to move her face closer. Although she didn't say it, it was obvious that she missed Jianghu very much too. The party with Huang Yunfei and the others ended very early. Although their bodies had changed a little because of eating the things produced in Jianghu's manner, the changes were really too little. Therefore, the party ended very early. After 8:00, everyone went to experience Jianghu's hot spring and went to bed. When Jianghu returned to his room, Aphrodite and Dana had been waiting for a long time. Jianghu was a little tired yesterday, so he didn't ask them to come over. But this morning, they had been waiting here. When the three of them met, it was naturally like lightning attracting fire. They were instantly attracted to each other like two polar magnets. Their lips and teeth intertwined, and the temperature between the three of them rose rapidly. There was nothing much to say about what happened next. Unknowingly, the three of them also came to Jianghai's white jade bed. Dana was more proactive than Aphrodite. She took off her top in an instant, but when she took off her lower body, she hesitated for a moment. Only then did Jianghai notice that Dana was wearing a pair of black stockings on her lower body today. I heard that you like them, so I bought them. Do you want me to wear them? Seeing Jianghai's gaze, Dana giggled and looked at Jianghai. Hearing what she said, Jianghai shook his head. I don't have any special interest in these things. It was hard for him to understand men's love for these stockings. At least, he didn't have any feelings for these things. It was another matter when it was fast, but when there was time to fill it. He preferred the state where both of them were naked. Hearing Jianghai's words, Dana couldn't help but curl her lips and take off her stockings. She prepared a lot of pairs of stockings for you. Black, white, long tube, suspenders, mesh, all kinds. But I know she's thinking too much. You won't like them. Hearing what Jianghai said, Aphrodite couldn't help but laugh. Indeed, compared to Dana, Aphrodite knew Jianghai better. Well, let's not care about that. Let's do it. Looking at Dana again, Jianghai laughed and pulled her directly into his arms. There was nothing more to say after that. As the saying goes, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Of course, what he needed the most was Aphrodite and Dana. They were very proactive at this time, and Jianghai naturally wouldn't be passive. Since he had made up his mind to keep them by his side, there was no need to say anything more. It was that simple. It was a quiet night, but the smell in Jianghai's room wasn't very good. As October approached, it was no longer possible to sleep with the windows open at night. And if the windows were closed, the smell wouldn't spread out. Of course, Jianghai didn't have to think about this because the next morning, when Aphrodite and Dana left, they would open the windows. When Jianghai woke up after 8 in the morning, the air in the room was fresh again. After washing his face and brushing his teeth, Jianghai pulled himself together, put on his clothes, and walked downstairs. He found that not many people were awake today. Huang Yunfei and his wife didn't wake up. Only Su Wei and Fu Yuan were awake. The two of them didn't go outside to look at the car. Instead, they stayed in Jianghai's living room and looked at Jianghai's huge fish tank. When they came the day before yesterday, they had already noticed this fish tank, but they hadn't looked at it carefully. In the end, they couldn't help but be a little surprised when they saw it. Su Wei didn't know much about fish, but he also knew that this should be a golden dragon and a red dragon. Fu Yuan was in the inspection business. He had been to many real estate companies and the like, and business had to pay attention to feng shui. And the feng shui, of course, was to use a fish tank. The fish raised in it were also very particular, and dragons were inevitable. So he roughly knew the price of these arowana. He didn't know the specifics, but he knew that it was definitely worth a lot. I say, when did you raise these fish? Seeing Jianghai wobbling down, Fu Yuan immediately asked. Raise them for a month? Looking at these arowana swimming in the water, Jianghai thought for a moment and said. A month? Can you raise them so big in a month? Pointing to the fish in the water, Fu Yuan obviously didn't believe it. Are you stupid? I didn't buy babies. Rolling his eyes, Jianghai said to him. He didn't say how these arowana came about. After all, it was quite troublesome to explain. You should know that buying and selling arowana is not allowed in the United States. It is illegal. Hearing Jianghai's words, Fu Yuan froze for a moment, then touched his chin. Indeed, it's not like Jianghai can't afford to buy adult arowana. But these things are very expensive. But when he thought of the price of these things, to be honest, he was a little conflicted. Yeah, it's really not cheap. I'm waiting for these arowana to give birth and then sell them back to Wuxia. Looking at the fish in the fish tank, Jianghai smiled and muttered. When he first got these fish, he also had the same idea. But what he wants to sell is not the ordinary gold dragon and red dragon. No matter how good the gold dragon and red dragon are, how much can they be worth? Excluding those that had been hyped up, the most expensive red fish that was sold for 2,685 million renminbi was only around 300,000 renminbi. The price of Jianghai's cow is equivalent to several red dragons of this level. Moreover, Jianghai's cows mature once a year. These red dragons are only worth this price after living for a few years, so it's unrealistic to rely on these things to sell for money. Jianghai's target is the platinum dragon. The price of 300,000 renminbi for a baby is Jianghai's target. But the other arowana that are born can also be sold. It takes a long time to raise a red dragon that is worth hundreds of thousands of RMB. But generally, he can sell some small fish that are worth tens of thousands to Wuxia. Maybe we can do this business. When the time comes, we can open an aquarium shop. If your arowana are born, let us sell them. Hearing Jianghai's words, Fu Yuan's eyes suddenly lit up. In any case, Jianghai was going to sell his fish, so he might as well buy his fish. Although it is said that good friends are not suitable to do business together, because sooner or later they will fall out. But if it's just a relationship of buying and selling, it doesn't matter. He's just a little dissatisfied with his current job. After the new head of state of the imperial court came to power, many policies were introduced. Their originally lucrative industry was hit hard. Originally, it would not be a problem for him to make 10 to 20,000 yuan a month. But now, he could only make about 10,000 yuan a month after working himself to death. One had to know that he still had to provide for the house. Speaking of which, it was very sad. So it's no wonder that he wants to change careers. Hearing his words, Jianghai nodded his head in agreement. It's just some young arowana. Besides, it's not like Fu Yuan doesn't want to pay. He doesn't care about this. Since he wants to open such a shop, he'll give it to him. Anyway, if Jianghai's fish give birth, they will be distributed to China. At that time, it doesn't matter if he gives some to Fu Yuan. Seeing Jianghai nodding, Fu Yuan couldn't help but look at the fish again. At the same time, he also calculated in his heart. If he wants to open such a shop, how much risk and cost would there be? Looking at his appearance, Jianghai and Su Wei didn't disturb him. They went straight into the kitchen and began to prepare breakfast. When breakfast was almost ready, Huang Yunfei and his wife also came downstairs. Seeing that breakfast was ready, they didn't wait. They asked Fu Yuan to set up the table and tableware together. Then, it was time to eat breakfast. Today's breakfast is still more Western. Because Jianghai is very lazy, and Chinese food is more or less troublesome. Cheddar soup, bread, and sausages. But in addition, there is also milk. This milk is not bought outside, but produced in Jianghai's manner. When he bought cows last time, Jianghai specially bought a few Holstein cows, which are black and white Holstein cows. 2 of them are about to give birth. In less than half a month after returning, these 2 cows gave birth. The cows that gave birth to calves can produce milk. Jianghai also specially bought a set of milk production equipment for this. Of course, the milk that is directly squeezed out can't be drunk. It can only be drunk after it is mixed with hot water. But these are all left to Robbins Garcia. Robbins Garcia was an out-and-out old cowboy. He knew a lot about beef cattle, and he wasn't lacking in milk cows. Every day, he would mix fresh milk. However, the milk production of 2 cows was enough to supply everyone in the manor. It wasn't enough to sell. Jianghai originally bought these cows for himself to drink milk, so he didn't think about selling them. There is a beef cattle economy, but milk cows? Jianghai doesn't care about making money. After eating an authentic Winthrop breakfast, everyone packed up. Jianghai took them to visit the town. Sitting on Jianghai's war shield, the group went directly to the town. At this time, the weather has turned cold. Winthrop, which was very popular a few months ago, has become a lot quieter recently. But there are still many tourists who have not left. Although they can't drink water now, the seafood is much more delicious than it was in the beginning. The mid-autumn crab fat is also the same in the United States. Seeing Jiang Hai's war shield driving into the town, not only will the people in the town take the initiative to greet Jiang Hai, but the tourists will also come over to get a discount from Jiang Hai. Now, most of the people who come here to play are here to eat seafood, and Jiang Hai's seafood is famous here. It will not be wrong to get close to Jiang Hai. Along the way, the original half-hour drive took nearly an hour to arrive. But fortunately, they finally arrived. After parking the car in the town's parking lot, Jiang Hai took his friends for a stroll. Chapter 603. Wow, the economy here is really developed. They walked into the central district of the town, which was the commercial street. Speaking of which, other than this place, there was no other famous place in the town. As soon as they walked in, Huang Yunfei's wife couldn't take her eyes off of it. Women always have an abnormal obsession with shopping, and no one can stop them. Not to mention, this street was full of foreign products that were very good for her, so naturally, she couldn't take her eyes off of it. Your style is not right. I thought it was the same as on the way here, a rural town in the United States. Where did so many shops come from? However, compared to Huang Yunfei's wife, Huang Yunfei was a little scared. He didn't know the price of these shops, but Chinese people always subconsciously feel that foreign products should be very expensive. Although it's not that he couldn't afford it, he still felt a little sorry for his wallet. Now Winthrop is also a tourist attraction, so it can be considered a shopping street. However, although there seems to be a lot of things here, the prices are very cheap. These clothes are basically dozens of dollars, which is only a few $100s when converted to RMB, but the quality is much better than the hundreds of dollars in China. The basketball shoes over there are also very cheap. The James 13 basketball shoes sell for $1,599 in China, but on the official website here, the normal color matching shoes are only $200, and the special color matching shoes are only $245, which is more than $300 cheaper. It's even cheaper here. I saw it a few days ago. It seems to be $170, and they are all produced in the United States. The quality is better than the ones produced in South Vietnam. Looking at Huang Yunfei's stingy look, Jiang Hai also explained with a smile. Upon hearing Jiang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei and the others were stunned for a moment. To be honest, they originally thought that the shoes and clothes here would definitely not be cheap, but they didn't expect that the price was actually very affordable. No wonder there were so many people shopping here. Nearly half of the shops here belong to me, but I've rented them out. If you want to buy anything, you can buy it. The quality of the Western ginseng is better than that in China, and the price is not expensive. Generally, a 20-year-old wild Western ginseng is about $100. The ginseng is sold by the Iroquois, which is a branch of the Native Americans. It's all authentic. There are also some small accessories, which are all very good. Maple syrup is also a must when you go back, and that's for your parents. As for the clothes here, it's up to you. If you want to buy iPads, that's fine too. However, this time, they were just here to shop. If they wanted to buy something, they would have to wait until they were about to leave. Now was not the time to buy things. After shopping for about 2 hours, Jiang Hai took them to the Italian restaurant that he used to frequent. Unexpectedly, the Italian restaurant, which was only good at first, was overcrowded at this time. A large number of local tourists and Wuxia tourists gathered here. In fact, it also proved that the shop owner's cooking skills were really good. Otherwise, it would be impossible to attract so many people. The shop owner was very happy about this. When he saw Jiang Hai coming over, he was naturally very enthusiastic. He deliberately led Jiang Hai to a private room at the side. In fact, the private room was something that he had just recently set up because Wuxia people liked it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had such a thing here before. Since Jiang Hai brought his friends to support him, the Italian boss naturally used his mixing technique and made an authentic Italian cuisine. To be honest, if Jiang Hai's parents were to eat this sweet and sour food, they would probably be depressed to death. Because their generation didn't like to eat this kind of taste, but Jianghu and the others tasted good. Everyone was quite satisfied with the lunch. When they checked out, they realized that the meal had only cost them $30, which was less than 200 yuan. Su Wei and the others were filled with emotion at the price. After lunch, the group of 5 left the restaurant. According to the original plan, they were going to the gun shop in the afternoon. The gun shop was in the town. After Jianghu and the others walked out of the commercial area, they went to the gun shop. But halfway through, they found that Mayor Wallace was walking around the town with some guys in suits and ties. Those people walked for a while and stopped to take photos of the nearby area. At the same time, Jianghu also noticed the helplessness on Mayor Wallace's face. Seeing this scene, Jianghu felt a little strange. Who could make the local tyrant Mayor Wallace unhappy? Mayor. Thinking of this, Jianghu waved at Mayor Wallace. Hearing Jianghu's voice, Mayor Wallace also looked over. When he saw that it was Jianghu, a hint of excitement flashed in his eyes. When did you come back? Seeing that Jianghu was here, Mayor Wallace said a few words to the people around him, then quickly walked to Jianghu's side and said to Jianghu with a smile. This time, with Jianghu here, things may be much easier to handle. I just came back, what's the situation? Hearing Mayor Wallace's words, Jianghu asked strangely. Hey, you were gone for half a month, something happened in the town. Looking at Jianghu, Mayor Wallace sighed. What's the matter? Looking at Mayor Wallace's appearance, Jianghu's brows wrinkled. He looked at the people who came over with a bad expression. They are people from Celanese company. They want to build a factory here. Hearing Jianghu's words, Mayor Wallace said helplessly. At the same time, looking at the people behind him, he was also a little speechless. Celanese? Hearing Mayor Wallace's words, Jianghu was a little confused. He had never heard of this company. Hello, my name is Peter **********, the head of the logistics department of Celanese company. This time, I came to your town mainly to choose a factory site. Seeing that Mayor Wallace was so excited when he saw Jianghu, the leader of Celanese company, a middle-aged white man, also knew that Jianghu should have a lot of influence in this town, so he took the initiative to introduce him. Hello, Jianghu, but I don't quite understand what you are talking about. Looking at the hand that reached over, Jianghu also shook his hand, then frowned and said with some confusion. To put it simply, our company has taken a fancy to the location of your town. The location of your town is still very good. It is very close to Boston and also very close to the airport. It can also be transported by sea. It can cover the eastern part of the United States and can also be sold overseas, so our company has decided to start production and build a factory here. Hearing Jianghu's words, Peter also gave a brief introduction, but Jianghu was still confused because he didn't know what this Celanese company was about. Celanese is a chemical company. It is most famous for manufacturing chemical products, not allowed to write, and the like. It is also a manufacturer of high-performance engineering plastics. Looking at Jianghu's puzzled eyes, Mayor Wallace couldn't help but whisper to Jianghu. Hearing his words, Jianghu frowned instantly. Mayor, are you crazy? Why would our town recruit a chemical manufacturer to invest in it? Don't you want our land and ocean? Looking at Mayor Wallace in front of him, Jianghu's face was not very friendly, and he said with a questioning face. Oh, I think Mr. Jianghu has misunderstood us. The chemical products produced by our company are famous all over the world. Although our company is a chemical company, the products we produce do not pollute the atmosphere, water resources, and land. The U.S. government can testify for us. Hearing Jianghu's words, Peter hurriedly said. Pollution was a very serious topic abroad, but in this world, there was nothing that money couldn't solve, right? A chemical company saying that its products would not pollute the land, atmosphere, and water resources, who would believe it? As for what the government said, those who would believe it were pure fools. Whether others believed it or not, Jianghu did not believe it anyway. No matter what the mayor decides, I will never agree to let you in. It's as simple as that. Looking at Peter in front of him who was still trying to persuade him, Jiang Hai directly waved his hand and forcefully interrupted his words. Hearing Jiang Hai's tough words, the other party could not help but shrug and turn his head helplessly. But Jiang Hai noticed that when he turned his head, a trace of killing intent flashed in his eyes, but he hid it very well and was not discovered by Jiang Hai. I'll talk to you about this in the evening. Well, you should accompany your friend first. Seeing that Jiang Hai's words had dropped the atmosphere to the freezing point, Mayor Wallace stood up and tried to smooth things over. Hearing Mayor Wallace's words, Jiang Hai thought for a moment and did not say much. He believed that Mayor Wallace was not stupid. He should be able to understand the purpose of these people's arrival. Would they not pollute just because they said they would not pollute? Chemical factories, even if one were to think with their toes, would cause a lot of damage. Perhaps for ordinary people, the damage was still acceptable, but for Jiang Hai, it was absolutely unacceptable. He chose this place because of the good environment. If these factories moved in now, it would be a huge threat to Jiang Hai's upgrade. He could not let these people enter Winthrop no matter what. After glancing at these people, Jiang Hai nodded to Mayor Wallace. They would talk about it in the evening. Then, he took Fu Yuan and the others to the shooting range in the distance. Seeing Jiang Hai and the others leave, the people of Celanese narrowed their eyes. Everyone, this way please. Like I said, I don't have the slightest bit of confidence in you all moving in here. My townspeople aren't idiots to that extent. Looking at those people, Mayor Wallace spoke again. Chapter 604. What's the matter? Walking over with Jiang Hai, Huang Yunfei whispered to Jiang Hai. Although Jiang Hai and the others were speaking in English, they were also confused. But looking at the atmosphere just now, they felt that something was wrong. Nothing, those people are from a chemical factory and want to build a factory here. Hearing Huang Yunfei's words, Jiang Hai was also thinking about what was going on at this time, so he said casually. Build a factory? Isn't that a good thing? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Su Wei and Fu Yuan also came over. A good thing? How can you tell that it's a good thing? Seeing these people's expressions, Jiang Hai was stunned. Is this a good thing? Of course, if a factory is built here, it will need workers, and it will solve the problem of making money for the people in the town. And the factory will naturally pay taxes for its profits. With the tax and the political system here in the United States, the money can be used to help the town increase its welfare and public facilities. Isn't this a good thing? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei couldn't help but say. What they said was actually reported in the domestic news. In China, if a small town, a small village, attracted investment and got a factory, it would be a big deal. Not only would it solve the problem of jobs for the people here, but it could also generate income for the local area. This is an out-and-out good thing. People in China are racking their brains to get the factory set up. Why does it look like Jiang Hai doesn't want this factory to open? What the hell is this? Are you mistaken? This is a chemical factory, a chemical factory. Hearing their words, Jiang Hai almost laughed out of anger. I heard them. Didn't they say they are from Celanese? I know this company. It mainly makes acetic acid, which is plastic. The toxicity of this thing is not too high. The environmental damage of this factory is okay. At least it is much better than paper factories, fertilizer factories, agricultural pharmaceutical factories, etc. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei waved his hand indifferently. Hearing their words, Jiang Hai was so angry that he laughed. If this happened in China, indeed, a plastic factory would not cause a big backlash, but if this is the case, then why did Jiang Hai come to the United States? Isn't it fine in China? Coming here was for a particularly clean environment. Winthrop's side was like a piece of white paper. If a drop of ink were to touch it, it would turn into a paste. In the eyes of the people in the country, the impact of the factory was not big, but Jiang Hai was completely unacceptable. It doesn't make sense to you. Winthrop's main focus is on the ecological environment. There is no environmental pollution at all. As long as I am here, no chemical factory can open here. Hearing Huang Yunfei's words, Jiang Hai said clearly. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the few people here laughed. You are too serious. How is there no chemical factory? According to you, without these chemical factories, where would the plastic and paper come from? Where would the fertilizer and pesticides come from? Where would those chemical products come from? As long as they emit according to the standards, it will be fine. Indeed, for the people of China, making money is the most important thing. With the recent increase in awareness of environmental protection, the concept of environmental protection was raised. But environmental protection is not as important as money. No matter how little a chemical factory emits, it will still cause pollution. In China, these pollution will not attract much attention. This is also a negative situation brought about by the rapid development of society. It is the same in China now. When the US was developing rapidly, it was even worse than China. The economy was developing rapidly, but the land, air, rivers, and water were all polluted. The US spent decades to clean up the pollution. Now, only these rural areas had reached the most suitable state for human habitation. Some rich people, under such circumstances, also drank water imported from Northern Europe. They don't want to drink water from the US. This shows the impact of pollution on the environment. Some people might say that setting up a factory here will not cause too much pollution in the short term. After a few years of making money, they can close down the factory. This is a win-win situation. But Jiang Hai cannot accept this. The reason he came here was because the spirit qi here was increasing very quickly. He couldn't tolerate the slightest bit of pollution here. Indeed, just as Huang Yunfei had said, this world definitely needed plastic. These things would be built anywhere. Even if they were not built here, they would have to be built elsewhere. If they were built here, it would increase and stimulate the development of the local area. But Jiang Hai will absolutely, definitely, 10,000% not agree. This is a matter of principle. Okay, Winthrop must be maintained in a pure state. I can allow this place to become a tourist attraction, but I will never allow a chemical factory to be built here. So needless to say, I will definitely not allow this thing to be built. I can't tolerate the existence of pollution. Jiang Hai waved his hand and interrupted Huang Yunfei's words. He directly defined this matter. Hey, you've been abroad for a year. You're really getting more and more sentimental. This is not a big deal in China, but it's quite troublesome here. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Huang Yunfei touched his nose and said with a smile. In fact, this matter had nothing to do with him. He was just casually talking about it. Seeing that Jiang Hai had already made a decision, he chose to shut up. Afterwards, the group of 5 went to the shooting range. Jiang Hai also had a stake in the shooting range, and it wasn't a small amount. Seeing that Jiang Hai had personally come, the shop assistants here were naturally very polite. They helped Huang Yunfei choose a gun and then taught them how to use it step by step. Naturally, this led to a wave of photos. These were all real guns. Except for Fu Yuan, other people have no chance to touch these real guns. Now that they touched them, it was really awesome. Even Huang Yunfei's wife, LV Jiao, was satisfied after shooting 5 magazines. But watching them shoot, Jiang Hai didn't play with them. First, because he doesn't care about these things now, and second, because he is still thinking about the chemical factory. Jiang Hai also listened to what Huang Yunfei said, although he will never let pollution enter Winthrop. However, the townspeople of Winthrop might not think that way. Although they were earning a lot more than before, no one would feel that having too much money was a problem. Huang Yunfei represented the thinking of the majority of the people. Since the government had said that the plastic produced by these people was not toxic, then they would subconsciously think that there was no pollution and that they could still make money without pollution. That was the best choice. In China, public opinion was very important, not to mention in the United States where human rights were constantly mentioned. It seems that Mayor Wallace, a sensible person, sometimes can't make the decision in the town, especially when many people are interested in this thing. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so excited to see me today. It seems that if I want to drive this company out, I have to rely on Jianghai's momentum. Thinking of this, Jianghai's heart couldn't help but sink. It seems that the other party may have come prepared. But in any case, Jianghai will definitely not let these people open the factory. This is not Jianghai's style. Everything will wait until Mayor Wallace comes in the evening. He will probably give Jianghai a satisfactory answer. After playing with guns here, the night quietly covered Winthrop town. Jianghai didn't go back for dinner today. Instead, he went to a burrito shop to let Huang Yunfei and the others try the authentic South American flavor. To be honest, they liked the sour, sweet, and spicy taste. After having a good meal, Jianghai drove back to his manor. At this time, in the manor, Bernice, Xiaoya, and the others have already eaten dinner. Huang Yunfei and the others have been running for the whole day. In the afternoon, they have been standing there shooting, so they are already a little tired. After taking a bath in the hot spring, they went back to their room to rest. Of course, they didn't necessarily sleep because there is internet, TV, and everything in the room. They can also lie on the bed to play. As for Jianghai, he laid on his white jade recliner. He remembered that Mayor Wallace said that he will come in the evening, so he is waiting for him. Mayor Wallace didn't let Jianghai wait for too long. At about 8:30 in the evening, his car also appeared in front of Jianghai's manor. Jianghai opened the door and let Mayor Wallace drive the car over. The car stopped. Looking at Jianghai sitting there, Mayor Wallace couldn't help but slow down his footsteps, but he still slowly walked over. He picked up a bottle of beer that Jianghai put next to him, opened it, and sat on another recliner, looking up at the starry sky while drinking beer. Looking at Mayor Wallace, Jianghai finally couldn't hold back and asked him, "Didn't you have something to tell me?" "Originally, I had something to tell you, but after seeing you, it's nothing. Because I know that even if the whole town goes crazy, you won't go crazy. And most importantly, the cards in your hands are much more important than that company." Looking at Jianghai, Mayor Wallace said with a smile, "Can you tell me what happened?" Hearing the old fox's words, Jianghai sighed. He knew what the old guy was talking about. Now, Jianghai and the town of Winthrop were closely related. Many people in Winthrop relied on Jianghai to eat. Not to mention his employees, those tourists from Wuxia were recruited by him. As long as he wanted, he could stop the tourists. The shooting range over there, the seaside villa, half of the shops on the commercial street, as long as Jianghai wanted, he could directly turn Winthrop from a new tourist town to its original state in an instant. And Jianghai could afford this money, but the townspeople couldn't. So even if it was to earn this money, the townspeople would do whatever Jianghai said. This was inevitable. From this point of view, Jianghai's influence had already surpassed that of Mayor Wallace. This was also the fundamental reason why Mayor Wallace was so calm. With Jianghai, they were already in an invincible position. Chapter 605. However, even if Jianghai stood firmly on this side, he still had to know what was going on. It all started a week ago. Hearing Jianghai's words, Mayor Wallace also took a sip of beer, then raised his head, looked at the stars in the night, and told Jianghai about it. This matter was mainly because of three people, Faraday Kirk, Hewlett Kirk, and Augustine Wilson. Speaking of these three people, Jianghai also knew them. Faraday Kirk was Mayor Wallace's brother. He worked in the Boston Tourism Bureau and had a high position. When Winthrop wanted to apply to become a tourist attraction, he made things difficult for Wallace. Hewlett Kirk was Faraday Kirk's son. When he wanted to pursue Scheitclive in the town, he was taught a lesson by Jianghai. For this person, Jianghai did not have a deep impression because he had only seen him once. The last person, Augustine Wilson, Jianghai still had a slight impression of him. He had met this person once a year ago. This person had a younger brother named Faraday Wilson. It seemed that there were quite a lot of bad guys named Faraday. Faraday Wilson used to work with Bunny and Wallen, the younger brother of Billy Wallen, whom Jianghu killed. The two of them once dealt with Jianghu. It was the first crisis Jianghu encountered after he came here, but these people were all sent to prison by Jianghu in the end. It was also because Jianghu was not so strong at that time. Otherwise, these people would not be in prison, but directly disappear from the world. Jianghu did not want to let go of these people who were a threat to him. There would be a day when they would be released from prison, so he preferred to strangle the danger in the cradle. Don't talk to him about the law or justice. Jianghu would not listen to these. He only knew that someone wanted to harm him, so he would kill him. However, even if these people didn't die, they wouldn't be able to come out for more than 10 years. Augustine Wilson was originally Faraday Wilson's brother. After Faraday's accident, he could no longer stay in this town. Later, he went to Boston, but after the first time the people in Boston found trouble with Jianghu, he fled. Perhaps he was afraid that Jianghu would catch him, so he fled far away and went to the central part of the United States, Texas. His original idea for coming here was very simple. He just wanted to rely on his cowboy skills to find a job here. However, after coming here, he realized what Texas did not lack the most. There was no shortage of cowboys. He was one of the top 100 in Winthrop, and he would be one of the last few in any town. Unable to find a job as a cowboy, he was finally hired by the Celanese Company, which was originally based in Texas. Later, the company wanted to expand its business in the East, and it would be best to find a port city. However, the company's current annual turnover was only about $5.9 billion. It was a lot of income, but for a company, it was not enough to easily find a piece of land in the eastern coastal area, where every inch of land was worth an inch of gold. Therefore, their initial target was New Jersey and Massachusetts. However, after their proposal was submitted, New Jersey directly rejected it. They could not easily let a chemical factory enter. If it was a local factory, it might be possible, but definitely not a foreign one. Massachusetts also rejected it because it was a chemical factory. However, compared to New Jersey, Massachusetts was not too tough. Therefore, the company went to do some public relations. In the end, Hewlett Kirk, who received the money, told his father about it. His father also wanted to take revenge on Winthrop, so he convinced the authorities that Winthrop might be able to do it. When the company's people arrived at Winthrop, they found that it was really suitable, so they told Mayor Wallace. Mayor Wallace naturally rejected it directly, but they did not give up. Later, they dug out Augustine Wilson, who was also from Winthrop, to persuade his fellow villagers. They wanted the people of Winthrop to believe that their chemical factory was not toxic and had no side effects. It would only be a positive development for the local economy, and there would be no vicious cycle. Although there were many commoners who didn't completely believe it, they also wanted to do as Huang Yunfei said. They wanted to let the factory be built first so that they could earn more money. If it really had an impact in the future, they could just close it down and rebuild it. It was precisely because of the townspeople's thinking that Mayor Wallace, who had rejected it very straightforwardly, felt helpless. Because some townspeople went to the town hall to make a scene, wanting to increase their income. Although Mayor Wallace was the local tyrant here, his power was not given by the American government, but by the local people. The people could elect him, but they could also dismiss him. It was precisely because of this that even though he made it clear that he didn't support them, the other party still sent a delegation to negotiate. He had to go along with them to deal with them, which led to the scene that Jianghu saw today. Hearing Mayor Wallace's words, Jianghu's fingernails gently tapped on the chair. So, there's a traitor among us? Looking at the stars in the sky, Jianghu did not want to see these things one day, but once the chemical factory was opened, who knew what would happen? At least, Jianghu would never agree to it. Traitor? It seems a bit overboard, but those people are really hateful. Hearing Jianghu's words, Mayor Wallace could not help but feel a little conflicted. The culture of Wuxia and the culture of the United States were completely different. For example, in Wuxia, being captured during a war was a stain in one's life, and it could not be washed away. But in the United States, captives were allowed during a war. For example, Andrew Jackson, who was once captured, later became the 7th President of the United States. Therefore, the gap between Wuxia and the United States was very big. In China, if something like this happened, it was not an exaggeration to call those people traitors. But in the United States, it was just people with different ideas, and no one would even blame them. This was the reality. But in the face of absolute power, what they say is useless. Tomorrow, you spread some news, saying that I will never allow any chemical factory to enter Winthrop's territory. If they enter, I will withdraw all the funds for the construction of Winthrop, close the shooting range, cut off the passage for Wuxia tourists, and close the commercial street and seaside villas. As for who to support, it depends on the people in the town. However, Jianghu was not someone who would smooth things over. Although these things were very common in the United States, the better way was to be soft. The Americans had always been very tough to outsiders, but they had always been very soft to their own people. But Jianghu was different. He was going to be tough to the end, and he would not agree to it. Let's see who the townspeople will support. If he was pushed too far, he could just move away. Although he had built this place for a year and had a lot of feelings for it, his ability to make a fortune came from the true dragon's essence in his body, not these external things. If he left, it would not take long for him to create a 2nd or 3rd Winthrop. But if he left, Winthrop would only become a dilapidated town, even if it had a chemical factory. You don't have to do this. Although I admit that there will be some pollution with a chemical factory, it shouldn't be to this extent, right? Sometimes, young people are too impulsive. Hearing Jianghu's words, Mayor Wallace was shocked. Although he really did not want this chemical factory to enter Winthrop, he could not do anything. But if the arm can't twist the thigh, then he will turn a blind eye. At most, he will arrange the location of the factory to be further away. But he didn't think that Jianghu would directly say such a thing. Then the townspeople will have to make a choice. In the end, they will choose Jianghu and live a comfortable life, or they will choose the chemical factory. No, there are some things that I can't explain to you. I can only say that I can only live in a world with almost no pollution. If Winthrop is no longer where I want to rest, then I will sell everything here and find another suitable place for me to live. There are some things that Jianghu can't say. Pollution will slow down the growth of his scales. This is the most unacceptable thing for him, especially after he received the benefits of the scales and aura. If this place is not good, then Jianghu can only choose to go to other places. There is nothing to discuss, this is an absolute bottom line problem. Well, okay, I will release the news tomorrow. Hearing Jianghu's words, Mayor Wallace could not help but be speechless. Originally, he came to discuss with Jianghu, but he did not expect that he would unknowingly find out such news. If the town wants to build a chemical factory, then will Jianghu leave? Looking at Jianghu's appearance, he did not seem to be lying, he was very serious. If he had to choose between the chemical factory and Jianghu, Mayor Wallace would definitely choose Jianghu. And he also believed that as long as the townspeople were not stupid, they would definitely choose Jianghu. After all, everyone knew that Winthrop's current situation was due to Jianghu. If Jianghu leaves, then what's the use of having a chemical factory? Going to work there would at most let their families earn more money. If they wanted to really make money, the most important thing was to travel. No one would be stupid enough to think that working in a factory would make more money than now. After a few more words with Jianghu, Mayor Wallace drove his car again and left Jianghu's manor, returning to his home in the town. Jianghu continued to look at the stars in the sky, only hoping that things would not go to the worst step. At this time, in the most luxurious villa in the row of seaside villas built by Jianghu, Peter, whom Jianghu met today, was now discussing the situation here with his team. Among the people in suits, there was also a more casual person. This person was none other than Augustine Wilson, but at this time, he was much more decadent than a year ago. Chapter 606. If that Jianghu clearly doesn't support us, then this matter is really a bit troublesome. Sitting on the sofa in the room, a middle-aged man who met Jianghu today pulled his tie and said gloomily. To be honest, the current situation of chemical factories was really quite awkward. Except for some established local industries, most developed countries would absolutely not allow new chemical factories to build in their own territory. This included countries in Europe and some countries in Asia. The only countries that could build factories with confidence were third world countries, including some countries in Southeast Asia and Africa. But the problem was that building a factory there would not be enough local consumption, so it would need to be shipped out. Just the tariffs on both sides and all kinds of miscellaneous expenses were enough to give Celanese a headache. They were only a small company with an annual income of $5.9 billion. They did not care if they were not a top company like Dow Chemical. Dow Chemical was more powerful than DuPont Group, but they could not, so it was best for them to choose a place in the United States to build a factory. The United States was definitely a developed country, but its uniqueness was that it was not a complete collection of countries. Instead, each state had its own independent government. It was precisely because of this that they could take advantage of a loophole. If one state did not allow it, another state might allow it. Now they had a good coverage in the central region. They were just waiting to open up the eastern market. They were still very interested in the eastern market. And they absolutely did not want to think about New York. They could not afford to build a factory. New Jersey directly told them that it was impossible. The only possible place was Massachusetts, which was their final target. So no matter what, they would not easily let go of this place. Even if the richest man and the mayor here had already told them that they did not support them, they were still prepared to try. They would not let go of even the slightest chance. Since they wanted to build a factory here, they must have already known the situation here. They naturally knew how important Jianghu was in the hearts of the residents here. If Mayor Wallace objected, they were 70% sure that they could build the factory. But if Jianghu objected, they might only have about 20%. It was undeniable that now in this town, Jianghu's status had already surpassed Mayor Wallace, because the lives of Jianghu and these townspeople were closely related. The townspeople counted on Jianghu to make money. If they fought with Jianghu head-on, the result might not be good. What do you think about this, Jianghu? Looking at the people in front of him, Peter, who was now the nominal supreme commander of this team, gently knocked on his chair and asked them. Hearing the leader's words, a young man here thought for a moment and said, if we want to conquer this place, this Jianghu is a big problem. I suggest we try to bribe him with money. In fact, not only in China, but also abroad, there were naturally some shady money, but because the punishment for accepting bribes was very strict here, for example, if someone bribed someone, this person could accept the money first and then report him. In this way, not only could he get the money, but he would also get the money that this person gave him. This person would also have to go to prison and not have to do anything for him. For example, if someone bribed Jianghu with $10,000, Jianghu could accept the money and then report this person for bribing him. He could keep the $10,000, and this person would have to pay him another $10,000. Then this person would have to go to prison, and Jianghu would not have to do anything for him. This was the bribery punishment mechanism in the United States. It maximized the distrust between the two parties who accepted bribes, so this kind of thing would naturally be reduced a lot. You're from here. Does this Jianghu care about money? Hearing this young man's proposal, Peter did not speak directly. Instead, he looked at Augustine Wilson. This guy was a spy among the townspeople. In my opinion, it's not very possible, because this Jianghu is much richer than you think. On the surface, his manor is worth $280 million. Last year, he sold 10,000 cows. I heard that he sold them for more than $1 billion. I'm not very clear about the specific amount of money, but next year, he will pay taxes. It's almost a few $100 million, so even if he can be bribed, it's not the result we want. Looking at Peter, Augustine Wilson hesitated and said. What he said was the truth. Although he also hated Jianghu, he could not ignore Jianghu's achievements. Hiss. Hearing Augustine Wilson's words, the people here could not help but gasp. Originally, they thought that Jianghu was just an ordinary rich man, but they did not expect that he was a billionaire. Perhaps in terms of total assets, he was not as good as Celanese Company, but don't forget that Jianghu owned it alone. He earned more than $1 billion a year, but Celanese Company was not theirs. They could not get so much money. For them, spending money was about a few $100,000, but now hundreds of thousands, or even millions, were nothing more than pocket money in Jianghu's eyes. This was troublesome. If spending money doesn't work, then what's the other way? Looking at the crowd, Peter directly rejected the idea of spending money and said to the crowd. Hearing his words, the people here looked at each other and hesitated. After a while, a middle-aged white man stood up and said to the crowd, I have an idea. We may be able to drive a wedge between Jianghu and the townspeople. After all, Jianghu is a Wuxia. Go on. Hearing his words, Peter did not say much and just looked at him. Seeing Peter's encouraging eyes, the middle-aged man also said, We all know that although there is no racial discrimination in the United States now, racial discrimination has always been there. After all, Jianghu is an Asian, and he has not become a naturalized citizen of the United States. So we may be able to start from this aspect and let the townspeople discriminate against Jianghu. This is not suitable because these people in the town are not fools. They know that their current lives have changed because of Jianghu. Jianghu invested in building the town and attracted tourists. Without Jianghu, there would be no new town and tourists. They probably would not rebel against Jianghu. But before this person finished speaking, he was interrupted by another person. Although it seemed that this strategy was vicious, people in the world were not fools, especially when it came to money. We can send people to lobby these townspeople and tell them that without Jianghu, they can also get these things. Jianghu is just using them to make money. He is a vampire attached to these people. But obviously, this person did not want to give up his strategy easily and said loudly to the crowd. Well, Maud, your idea is a bit too radical. As Carl said, the people here are not fools. They will believe what you said. Maybe they will in the future, but now they are still very clear-headed. However, the strategy you said is not completely useless. Waving his hand, Peter signaled the somewhat excited middle-aged man to calm down. Then he touched his chin and pondered. It was inevitable that they would not be able to compete with Jianghu in terms of money, whether it was Jianghu's own money or the people's money. They knew how important the tourism industry was to the development of the town. Even if a chemical plant attracted all the people in the town, how much income could this kind of occupation earn? It was poisonous and had side effects. $5,000 a month was already the limit of their company. That way, they could earn $60,000 a year. But now, they didn't have to work too hard, and they could earn more than $100,000 a year. For them, the chemical plant was a revenue-generating project, not a necessary project like tourism. Unless there was something wrong with their heads, they wouldn't want to compete for it. The United States was different from Wuxia. Finding a job in Wuxia was a serious matter, but the tourism industry was not so serious. But this was the United States, and there was no such thing as a serious job. If you could make money and not break the law, it was the best choice. Looking at the people in front of him, Peter also said, We can do this. Hearing Peter's words, the people here could not help but light up. This might be a good idea. After deciding on this plan, most of the people in this team went back to rest, preparing for the attack tomorrow. But there was one person who stayed in Peter's room. This person was also a member of the delegation. But usually, he never took the initiative to talk. He always stayed in the corner, and few people noticed him. If Belle, Azalina, and the others were here, they would be very vigilant against this guy. If this plan doesn't work, then we'll have to rely on you. Do you understand? Looking at this person, Peter whispered. Hearing what he said, this person nodded faintly and then left the room. Jianghu, let's see if you can stop us. After everyone left, Peter looked at the starry sky outside and then said with a chuckle. For him, this kind of thing was already a piece of cake. When the sun rose the next day, two news slowly spread in the town almost at the same time. The first news was from the town hall. It was said that Mayor Wallace went to Jianghu last night. Jianghu said very clearly that he absolutely did not support any chemical company to enter the town. If a chemical company entered the town, then he would withdraw from Winthrop and close all the shops related to him. The other news was Chapter 607. Jianghu won't leave this place. If he wants to leave, where can he find such a good place? The only reason he can make money is because of his ranch. If he leaves, where can he find such a good ranch? You've all been fooled by him. If he leaves, how can he make money? Winthrop is his tool to make money. He won't leave. Does Winthrop belong to him? If he wants to leave, let him go. We'll pay again and rebuild the things he built. It's not like we can't afford it. At most, we'll get a loan from the city government. We're a high-quality enterprise here. That's right. Think about it. Who's the most profitable person in Winthrop now? It's Jianghu. He's a businessman. A businessman is most particular about making money. Being able to make money is the most important thing. Don't you understand? The reason he doesn't let Celanese in is not because of pollution. He just wants to tie all your income to him. That way, he'll be the local tyrant here. Don't you understand that? When Jianghu wanted to withdraw his investment, some people who had nothing to do in Winthrop began to spread another version of the story. They said that Jianghu was reluctant to leave because he also needed to make money. This made the townspeople who were originally nervous when they heard the news calm down a lot. Indeed, they were not stupid. They could choose not to believe those who slandered Jianghu. As for those who said that Jianghu should leave, there were not many who believed it. If Jianghu left, where could they find tourists from Wuxia? After all, these people were the main force here. The local tourists, whether in terms of quantity or quality, the amount of money spent, were far inferior to the tourists from Wuxia. Jianghu definitely could not leave. They would not let Jianghu leave no matter what. After living a good life for a few months, they did not want to go back to their original life. Therefore, Jianghu definitely could not leave. However, whether Jianghu really wanted to leave or was just scaring them remained to be seen. Although Winthrop was not in an uproar, most people were watching. However, they all knew one thing. Jianghu and Mayor Wallace were the same. They did not support the chemical factory's move. They did not feel that he was that tough. Originally, 60% of the people supported the establishment of the chemical plant. After all, no one didn't want their family to be able to generate income. Another 20% of the people didn't care. Only less than 20% of the people supported Mayor Wallace. However, after today's incident, the people who supported Jianghu also supported Mayor Wallace. In an instant, more than 50% of the people supported the chemical factory's move. Almost 60% of the people did not support the chemical factory's move. Because of Jianghu's words, the people who supported the factory's move were reduced to 40%. Less than 10% of the people did not care. For a moment, the situation on Celanese's side was not very good. However, what was surprising was that Celanese people mainly used the idle people to discredit Jianghu, or to say that Jianghu would never leave. Other than that, they did not do anything else. It was not until the afternoon that Augustine Wilson stood up. According to him, the reason he brought Celanese people over was that he had worked in the factory before. He knew that the factory met American standards and would not pollute the environment. After all, this was his home. However, he did not want any irreconcilable conflicts between Celanese and Jianghu. Therefore, he decided to talk to Jianghu personally and persuade him not to leave. He also wanted to let Celanese move in. After he stood up, a lot of people supported him and followed him to Jianghu's place. For a while, he became a positive figure. It's true that when the forest is big, there are all kinds of birds. He even became a leader. But unfortunately, they were given the cold shoulder because Jianghu wasn't in the manor today. Huang Yunfei and the others hadn't left yet. Jianghu naturally wanted to accompany them to play. Anyway, his attitude had already been made clear. As for whether they believe it or not, it's up to them to decide. At most, he would sell the manor and take the cows and his fish to other places, although it would be troublesome. But now, Jianghu had the ability to go wherever he wanted. This was his greatest ability. When these people came to visit, Jianghu was at Old George's horse farm, leading Fu Yuan and the others to ride horses. Originally, there were horses in Jianghu's manor, but after all, there were now many cows in the manor. People like Robbins Garcia had to take care of the cows. There was no one to teach Fu Yuan and the others how to ride horses. There was also no one to take care of them. Instead of causing trouble in the manor, it was better to come to Old George's horse farm to play. Looking at Jianghu, Old George had obviously received some news. "Jiang, you're not really leaving, are you?" Looking at Jianghu, who was tired from riding and resting, Old George walked over and handed over a bottle of drink. Then, he said to Jianghu with some worry. "If the chemical plant is not built, why should I leave? I still like this place. It can be considered my home. But if that chemical plant is built, then I will have to leave." After taking a sip of the Coca-Cola that Old George handed over, Jianghu burped and said to Old George seriously. Why? The chemical plant is not in your way. Why do you have to leave?" Hearing that Jianghu was really leaving, Old George could not help but be a little excited. After all, his horse farm originally relied on selling horses for a living. Although it was not to the extent that he could not survive, his life was not too rich. But since Jianghu brought the tourists from Wuxia, this was the first time he knew that he could make so much money by letting people ride horses. The money he earned in the past 2 months was more than what he earned in a year by selling horses. Now that Jianghu was leaving, his heart was cold. "I can tell you. You also know that the cattle in my manor are very good." "Why?" "It's mainly because of the environment. My manor does not allow a little bit of pollution. If there is a little bit of pollution, the quality of the cattle in my manor will be greatly reduced. So if this chemical plant enters Winthrop, I can only leave." Looking at Old George, Jianghu thought for a while and made up a lie. There are some things that he can't say directly. Dragon balls, scales, aura, these things, they can't understand. Not to mention that he doesn't want to be cut into pieces for research. But it's a good idea to talk about cattle. This is also the explanation that he thought for a long time last night. And this explanation is also very persuasive. Hearing Jianghu's words, Old George couldn't help but say, "Oh." Indeed, Jianghu wants to make money by relying on Winthrop, but how much money can Winthrop make for him? 18 million a year? That was all there was to it. His main source of income was still his manor and his ranch. If Jianghu's soaring dragon manor is destroyed because of the chemical plant, then Jianghu's gains really don't make up for the losses. When Jianghu said this, Old George also believed it. This explanation is indeed reasonable. But what chemical plant? Didn't they say that they won't pollute the environment? At this time, Old George's heart was already biased. For him, Jianghu's existence is very important. If the contradiction between Jianghu and that chemical plant is irreconcilable, then he will definitely stand by Jianghu's side. This can be seen from his new title. There is a chemical plant that won't pollute the environment? Whether you believe it or not, I don't believe it. Shrugging, Jianghu said calmly. Hearing Jianghu's words, Old George, who has experienced the United States Civil War, couldn't help but laugh. He remembered the lies that the American government had told him when he was very young in order to develop the country. Chemical plants won't pollute, mines won't pollute, the West is full of gold. For these American civilians, the credibility of the United States government is just that. In this way, another person joined Jiang Hai's camp. But they didn't notice that at this time, in a corner in the distance, a white man also heard Jiang Hai's words. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, he frowned, then walked to the corner and took out his mobile phone. Not long after, Peter, who was still examining Winthrop, received a call from above. After learning that the news released by Jiang Hai was true, his eyes narrowed. It seems that between him and Jiang Hai, one of them must retreat in order to settle this matter. But thinking about it, he was still a little excited. If things went too smoothly, how could he be praised? Recently, he heard that the company's board of directors' dissatisfaction with the current general manager was about to reach the limit. If he performed well at this time, would he have the opportunity to compete for the position of being second only to one person? Thinking of this, Peter's eyes also lit up. In order to step on Jiang Hai, it seems that the debate has to continue. Isn't Jiang Hai going to leave? That's good, I'll let you go when the time comes. Thinking of this, he took out his mobile phone and sent a text message to Jiang Hai Wilson. Sometimes, it was so easy to plot against an unsuspecting person. And most importantly, he didn't think that Jiang Hai could win against him. Just as Jiang Hai returned to the manor, a new wave of debate came again, and this time, it was much fiercer than in the morning. There were even many radical people who directly shouted for Jiang Hai to get out of Winthrop. Although this kind of person was suppressed by Mayor Wallace and the police station's Morris Smith in the first place, it was not a big deal. But after all, Winthrop was a town with a population of more than 1,000 that could be found on a map. These jobless, idle people, and racists were everywhere. Usually, they didn't go against Jiang Hai because there were no benefits. Now that there were benefits, they even dared to provoke the President of the United States. Chapter 608. Are you really okay? Why don't you come back to China with us first? Standing outside the airport, Su Wei couldn't help but worry about Jiang Hai. Indeed, in his opinion, Jiang Hai's situation is really not very good. Don't worry, this is my home. Will I have any problems? Hearing his words, Jiang Hai smiled and said indifferently. You are so stubborn. Well, do as you see fit. Looking at Jiang Hai's indifferent look, the three people here couldn't help but sigh. Even Huang Yunfei's wife, LV Jiao, was much quieter at this time. In the days they stayed here, they watched Jiang Hai's words slowly change. From the first day they came, Jiang Hai was almost the most dazzling star in this town. Today, when Jiang Hai drove them to the airport, the people on the road would subconsciously avoid Jiang Hai. It was impossible for them to directly clash with Jiang Hai because Jiang Hai was not a saint or a person who only chased after the leader of the evil. If you dare to provoke him, you will be skinned alive. This is Jiang Hai's style. So although they were alienated, no one dared to come here to provoke him. At most, they just stayed away from him. Well, get on the plane. Send me a WeChat message when you get home. This time you came to play. I didn't expect to encounter such a thing. It's really bad luck. Come again when you have time. I will treat you well. Looking at the slightly tangled look of several people, Jiang Hai patted them on the shoulder and said goodbye to them one by one. Isn't it enough to carry it out properly this time? My circle of friends is about to explode. Every day, abalone, lobster, sea cucumber, beef, those food, to be honest, I guess I will think about it for a long time when I go back. And these things I bought, buddy, they are all great. Hearing what Jiang Hai said, Huang Yunfei couldn't help but give him a thumbs up. To be honest, he was very satisfied with this honeymoon trip. In fact, not only him, but his wife was also very satisfied. Although she had not seen too many famous historical sites, there were not many women who were interested in those things. She cared more about going shopping and eating these delicacies. To be honest, in her opinion, Jiang Hai's place was really too perfect, if not for those trivial matters. Alright, hurry up and go through the security check. I'll look for you guys when I go back during the new year. Looking at the reluctant look on everyone's faces, Jianghu smiled and urged them to hurry up and board the plane. These people were also very reluctant to leave Jianghu's place. Of course, it was also possible that they were reluctant to leave Jianghu's food. They helplessly waved their hands and walked through the security check. Of course, they had a lot of luggage, but they had already handled the transportation. This time, when they came to Jianghu's place to play, each of them brought back a lot of things, such as maple syrup, American ginseng, all kinds of clothes, shoes, trinkets, and so on. They bought a lot. Let's go, we should go back too. Seeing these people walking through the security check, Jianghu also said to the people behind him. At this time, it seemed that there was no one behind him. If someone heard Jianghu's words, they would probably suspect that he was sick or saw something that he shouldn't have seen. But Jianghu didn't care. When he turned his head, a woman wearing a baseball cap appeared on his side, carrying a box in her hand, wearing a pair of huge sunglasses, chewing gum. Looking at Jianghu walking over, she couldn't help but twitch her mouth slightly. How did you know I was here? Looking at Jianghu, the beauty took off her huge sunglasses, revealing a rather delicate face. Jianghu was very familiar with the owner of this face, Azalina Vicabrio. The glasses were given to Delina by Prawalton. The top is Bernice's, the bottom is Paige's, the earrings are Ohilia's, the shoes are Janice, and that bag is mine. Looking at Azalina, Jianghu said calmly. I didn't expect your memory to be so good. Young man, do you want to learn how to cook from me? Looking at Jianghu, Azalina smiled and approached him, then took the initiative to hold Jianghu's arm, but her words only got a supercilious look from Jianghu. Since the night Jianghu came back, in fact, Jianghu found that Azalina's situation was not right. He didn't see her that night. After learning that she was not feeling well, he went to see her the next day, only to find that she was not in the period when relatives came to visit her. Then she told Jianghu that in fact, these days, someone had been observing Jianghu's manner. And she was secretly watching that person to see what was going on with him. After learning this, Jianghu didn't care about her. Jianghu knew that if he went out today, Azalina would definitely follow him quietly. This was also Jianghu's confidence. Just now, when he saw a familiar figure, Jianghu knew that it must be her. How's the situation recently? Walking out of the airport with Azalina, Jianghu asked as they walked towards the parking lot. They haven't done anything recently, but they are still looking for people to slander you. But boss, when did you become so timid? Could it be that what they said was true? So that you can't refute it? Looking at Jianghu, Azalina asked curiously. These days, Celanese company had not been idle. Every day, they sent people to talk bad about Jianghu in town. Sometimes, a lie would be true if it was told 100 times. In recent days, they had been slandering Jianghu more than 100 times. It was precisely because of this that Jianghu's reputation in Winthrop was also badly damaged, very badly. But Jianghu acted as if he didn't know. He did what he was supposed to do and would not be hurt by these rumors. Seeing Jianghu's fearless look, the other party was even happier to slander him. When the people in the town saw that Jianghu had not come out to explain, they thought that the rumors were true. Therefore, they became more biased and were more careful with Jianghu. It had to be said that sometimes, people thought too much. Okay, my friends are gone. I should fight back. Otherwise, these guys will really think that I'm easy to bully. Touching Azalina's hair, Jianghu narrowed his eyes. He didn't care what these people said, but he was not someone to be trifled with. Looking at Jianghu's eyes, Azalina also smiled. The Jianghu she knew was like this. He would not be scared. Mayor Wallace, is it? Can you call for a town meeting tonight? I have something to say. When the two walked to the parking lot, Jianghu got in his shield and directly called Wallace. As for how to inform these people, Jianghu did not care. Anyway, he was going to directly kill those people tonight. There was no problem with a debate, but sometimes, they would think too much, and they felt that Jianghu was also thinking too much. At night? You. Okay, I believe you. Hearing that Jianghu wanted to gather the townspeople together, Mayor Wallace was stunned for a moment. Such a gathering was rare. Basically, these grand gatherings were only held during the election year or during the annual Poseidon Festival. Usually, they would not be held, but since Jianghu said that he wanted to gather, then he would hold one. Boss, what are you going to say tonight? Watching Jianghu hang up the phone, Azalina could not help but ask hesitantly. You will know tonight. Hearing Azalina's words, Jianghu smiled softly. Driving his car, Jianghu returned to Winthrop's home. In front of the gate of his manor, he looked at the azure dragon relief above the gate. This gate was specially made when he changed the name of the Soaring Dragon Manor. It should have been about a year ago. Jianghu looked at the azure dragon relief on the gate. Let's go, you don't have to follow me tonight. You must protect everyone here. After driving the car into the gate, Jianghu said to Azalina beside him. He felt that after he finished speaking tonight, things would not be so easy to solve. In fact, Jianghu was now forcing these townspeople to choose which side they would give up. It was that simple. Sometimes, if the tree was not fixed, the people would not be fixed. If these people were not treated too well, it was necessary to give them a warning. But what about you? Hearing Jianghu's words, Azalina asked with a worried look. Me? I'll take Conrad with me. Hearing Azalina's words, Jianghu smiled. He now had more than one bodyguard. And most importantly, Conrad looked more intimidating than Azalina. Jianghu did not feed him for free. At the critical moment, he had to be useful to Jianghu. After returning to the manor, Jianghu called back all the people, including those middle-aged women who were still taking care of business in the villa area. Everyone was holed up in the manor. No one was allowed to go out, and of course, no one was allowed to come in. At about 5:00 in the evening, Mayor Wallace called Jianghu and informed him that everyone had been informed. Of course, it was impossible for everyone to come. Basically, only one person from each family would come. After all, this was not the sea god ritual, and it was not a game. Something had really happened, so it was enough for the people in charge to come. But even so, it was estimated that there would be more than 200 people attending the party tonight. The time was supposed to be 6:30, but Jianghu had just left at that time. Before leaving, he had repeatedly told everyone not to leave the manor today, no matter what they heard. The men were to listen to Belle's command, and the women were to listen to Azalina's command. After everything was confirmed, Jianghu drove his battle shield and set off with Knerson Peters. Looking at the backs of Jianghu and Conrad, Bernice and the others felt a little worried, but Conrad was very excited at this time. The car soon drove out of the manor. Jianghu also called the town's police station and specially arranged for 2 patrol cars to stop at the gate of Jianghu's manor. This way, at least a lot of small troubles could be deterred. After resolving the situation in the manor, Jianghu drove directly to the town square. Chapter 609. Mayor, it's not that we want to say anything, but do you think this Jianghu has any sincerity? He said he wanted us to come over, and we came over, but he didn't. Is he playing with us? Mayor Wallace, I respect your character, but are you really not going to say anything now? The car drove into the town of Winthrop. From far away, Jianghu could hear the voices coming from the square. Originally, Jianghu came late, so it was inevitable that he would encounter some criticism, but it was obvious that some people were guiding the public's consciousness. Listening to these voices, Jianghu chuckled. The United States is a bit annoying. The people are too easy to take advantage of, just like the netizens of Wuxia. Generally, after something is posted on the internet, there will always be some violent comments, but there are almost no people who really know what happened. Those who manipulated this are the legendary Internet Water Army. However, those on the internet are called Internet Water Army, and in reality, they are called advocates. Jianghu will not let them go easily. As Jianghu's battle shield drove into the town, many people saw Jianghu's car. Jianghu is here. After someone in the crowd shouted, many people looked at Jianghu. After parking the car in the parking lot next to them, Jianghu and Knerson Peters got out of the car and went straight to the rostrum. Looking at Jianghu and Knerson Peters, many people took the initiative to make way for them, including those who were mixed in the crowd and guiding the public's consciousness. Sorry, I'm a little late. Walking to the rostrum, Jianghu looked at Mayor Wallace and said with a smile. It doesn't matter, as long as you are here. Seeing Jianghu come up, Mayor Wallace also breathed a sigh of relief and said to Jianghu with a smile. Sitting next to him, SH-20 Clive looked at Jianghu with a hesitant look. Hey, you, did you say the meeting was at 6:30? Don't you have a watch? Don't you have a sense of time? Look at what time it is. After Jianghu and Mayor Wallace greeted, a burly man came forward from the crowd and shouted at Jianghu. Hearing his words, Jianghu turned his head calmly and looked at him. Who are you? Looking at Jianghu's contemptuous eyes, the man was instantly speechless. It turned out that Jianghu didn't care what he was saying at all, and he didn't know him. In an instant, he felt that his face was slapped, and it was burning. Remember, my name is Calloway Rush, you bastard. Hearing Jianghu's words, the burly man couldn't help but shout. Oh, if you want to go to the toilet, go over there, there is a public toilet there. Looking at this man, Jianghu said calmly. You bastard. Seeing Jianghu's indifference to him, he couldn't help but feel even more embarrassed. This guy is Winthrop, a loafer who thinks he is a gangster and cares about his face. But now that Jianghu didn't give him any face, he couldn't help but take a step forward. Looking at his action, Knerson Peters also took a step forward. He likes to fight the most. Looking at Knerson Peters' action, several people in the crowd moved. If there is a conflict between Calloway and Knerson Peters, they will rush up and tell Jianghu and this big white man that Winthrop is theirs. Of course, if they can directly beat Jianghu, that would be the best ending. Wait a minute, Calloway, we are not here to create conflicts, we are here to solve conflicts. Jianghu, hello, I guess you still remember me, my name is Augustine Wilson. Seeing that a conflict was about to break out, a young white man stood up, stopped Calloway Rush's action, walked to the front of the crowd, and looked at Jianghu and said. Oh, I don't remember. Glancing at him, Jianghu still said calmly. If you don't remember, then don't remember. After all, I'm just an insignificant person, but today, we want to talk to you about Winthrop. Looking at Jianghu, Augustine Wilson said calmly. In his view, beating Jianghu up is meaningless because they can't kill Jianghu openly. What they want is for Jianghu to compromise and let Jianghu accept the chemical factory to move into the town. Silent violence is okay, but violence is not. Moreover, he doesn't think that Jianghu's bodyguards will not be armed. If there is a conflict, he will be in trouble. Jianghu, I don't understand why you must stop the chemical factory from moving into the town. Don't you know that this is a good way to increase the town's tax and residents' income? Looking at Jianghu, Augustine shouted excitedly. Augustine, this is a cold-blooded guy. He doesn't care about the life and death of the town's residents. What he wants is for the town's residents to continue to be poor so that he can better control the town's residents. Looking at Augustine's expression, Calloway Rush next to him continued to speak excitedly. What a cruel guy. He only has himself in his heart. He is such a selfish guy. At this time, a third voice emerged from the crowd. Look at the townspeople around you. What a simple townspeople. Don't you feel guilty for scheming against them? Are you still complacent? You control the economy of this town, you control the tourism of this town, you control everything in this town. You can do whatever you want here and ride on the heads of all the townspeople. Winthrop belongs to the people of Winthrop. You, an outsider, are not allowed to tell us what to do here. With a third voice, there would be a fourth, and a fifth. One voice after another emerged. Looking at these people, Jianghu did not do anything. He just looked at the people below calmly. Under the guidance of these people, most of the people began to whisper to each other. Now, they were starting to waver. Originally, they thought that Jianghu was going to say something or make concessions. But now, it seems like that wasn't the case. Yeah, why don't you let the chemical factory enter? This is a good way to increase income. You can't prohibit us from making money just because the chemical factory will pollute your manor. We also need to make a living. Finally, a young man was persuaded by these people and joined the ranks of these people. He looked at Jianghu on the stage and said loudly. Oh, he took the bait. Listening to this voice, Augustine lowered his head and couldn't help but show a smile. This is what he wants. There is no point in just instigators like them. They want to make Jianghu fall into the sea of people's war. Did you hear that? Jianghu? It's not that we are against you, but you can't let the town fall into a situation where there is no money to make because of your own reasons. Today it's the chemical factory, you don't let us build it. Tomorrow, there will be other factories, you won't let us build it. You are cutting off our way to make money. I remember there is a saying in Wuxia that cutting off people's way to make money is like killing their parents. You are really too cruel to do this. Looking at Jianghu, Augustine stood up and shouted at Jianghu with a face full of excitement. People like you can't represent Winthrop, and you can't block the way of the townspeople. Jianghu, you should get out of the way. Looking at Jianghu, who was still very calm, Augustine shouted loudly. Get out of the way. 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 With Augustine's words, the punks below also began to quarrel loudly. Hearing their words, many townspeople also joined in, and for a time, the square was filled with shouts. But among these people, there were many who stood firmly by Jianghu's side. Looking at these people, Jianghu smiled. It seemed that he was not the enemy of everyone. In fact, even if he was the enemy of everyone, he didn't care, not to mention that he wasn't. Hey, it seems to be working well. At this time, in a nearby block, the people of Celanese were gathered there. Looking at the square in the distance and listening to the deafening sound, Peter couldn't help but chuckle. He really didn't expect it to be so effective. He originally thought that Jianghu's reputation here was very stable, but now it seemed that it was just so. The voices are getting louder and louder. Jianghu's self-confidence has been shattered. This damn guy, he shouldn't be able to stop us this time. Hearing the words of the boss next to him, another person of Celanese couldn't help but whisper. The employees of Celanese behind them looked at this person with a trace of worship in their eyes. They really didn't think that this matter could be solved so easily. They could only say that their boss was indeed their boss. Looking at Jianghu standing on the high platform in the distance, Peter said proudly, Next, we will force the old mayor to vote. Celanese entry into Winthrop is in the bag. After solving the biggest problem, Jianghu, the rest were just small problems. Originally, he thought that Jianghu would be an opponent, but now it seemed that he was just so. Looking at Jianghu, who was standing motionless in the same place, Peter had a smug look on his face. The biggest rock had been moved by him. Jianghu, there is no doubt that you have saved this town, but the reactions around you are the cruel reality. You are very powerful, you are the most powerful person I have ever seen. You must have a way. Looking at the waves of voices below, each louder than the last, Clive couldn't help but whisper in her heart as she looked at Jianghu's straight back. At this time, her eyes were full of anxiety. The things between her and Jianghu were indeed not easy to talk about, but her heart had always been with Jianghu. Looking at Jianghu standing there suffering, she even wanted to replace him. You guys are really noisy. Just when Clive was helpless, Jianghu's voice came over. Chapter 610. You're all really noisy. Although Jianghai's voice was not loud, it clearly entered the ears of everyone present. This made the originally loud noise almost stop in an instant. Everyone saw Jianghai move for the first time on the stage. He picked his ear and then flicked it gently. Look, you've shaken out my earwax. Your decibel is already a little disturbing. Looking at Jianghai's understatement, many people looked at each other. There was clearly some confusion in their eyes. What did Jianghai mean? For a moment, those people's eyes were focused on Augustine Wilson because he was the one who took the lead. Jianghai, what do you mean by this? Are you looking down on the people of our town? Today, you must make a concession. Looking at Jianghai's calm look, Augustine was a little scared. After hesitating for a moment, he decided to stand up and said to Jianghai. It seemed that he still remembered his task. He was really a good employee. Oh, concession? Why should I give in? Looking at Augustine, Jianghai continued to say calmly. This is for the development of the town, so you must give in. Hearing Jianghai's words, Augustine continued. Sorry, maybe you've got a problem wrong. Looking at the crowd in front of him, Jianghai directly took a chair and sat down in front of everyone in the town. Then, he continued to look at the people in front of him with an unhappy face. This guy is right about something. Whether you want to admit it or not, the economy of this town is controlled by me. Hearing Jianghai's words, the people in the town below suddenly burst into an uproar. Jianghai dared to say this. Even the people in the town hall behind Jianghai were a little surprised. Didn't Jianghai take the initiative to push himself to the opposite side of the townspeople? What did Jianghai mean by this? However, Jianghai didn't care about them and continued. Firstly, I'm not here to negotiate with you. Secondly, I'm not here to negotiate with you. You've got your priorities wrong. Now, Winthrop's biggest industry is tourism. But without me, there won't be tourism. Hearing Jianghai's tough words, all the people present exchanged glances with each other. Jianghai's words were like a bucket of ice water, which poured over them in an instant. They wanted Jianghai to make concessions so that the town could have tourism and also allow the factory to enter. But Jianghai's words made the town's residents dumbfounded. Yes, without Jianghai, where would the tourism industry come from? Jianghai didn't just control the villas in the town, the shops, and the shooting range. He also controlled the flow of customers. The town's main tax revenue comes from my soaring dragon manor. I think there's no need for me to explain what this means. Yes, I'm in control of the town. Why aren't you trying to curry favor with me? You're still talking nonsense with me. I think you want to go back to the past. Looking at the people in front of him, Jianghai lifted his leg and said to them disdainfully. Hearing Jianghai's words, many people's hearts skipped a beat. Their gazes towards Jianghai also became much clearer. Winthrop belongs to Winthrop people. It's not something you can order around. Seeing Jianghai suppressing the whole town by himself, Augustine Wilson also became anxious. He couldn't help but step forward and shout at Jianghai. Whatever you say. I'm not a Winthrop. Whatever you say. Even if you treat me as a Winthrop, I'm still the richest man here. Everything here is given to you by me. Remember, it's given to you by me. We're not in an equal partnership. These things are mine. I can give them to you or not. If I want the tourism industry here to fail, then the tourism industry will fail. If I want the ranch to move away, then I can move the ranch away. It's that simple. Pointing at the people below, Jianghai said word by word. This feeling of being a villain really made Jianghai feel good to the bone. The townsfolk below were like the suppressed laboring masses. They listened to Jianghai's words and couldn't say a word. Although they wanted to refute, they knew that Jianghai's words were true. You'll leave Winthrop. Don't be kidding. Do you think we don't know how much money you can make here in a year? Are you willing to do that? You're giving up the interests of the people for your own benefit. You're a dictator. Looking at Jianghu, Augustine Wilson was still making his final struggle. However, when he looked at Jianghu's gaze was like looking at an idiot. The manor is mine, the route is mine, and the tourists are mine. You're talking about dictatorship here? Well, this is dictatorship. If you're not satisfied, you can stand up. Toph, there's no need to hide. I saw you. You were shouting very loudly just now. Well, I'll fulfill your wish. I'll take back your shop. I'll give you 1 day to move your things. The day after tomorrow, I want to see it empty on the commercial street. Hearing Jianghu's words, a middle-aged man in the crowd suddenly sat down on the ground. He looked at the people around him with a face full of horror. The people around him unconsciously stood aside, as if they wanted to draw a clear line between them and him. His shop was a very conspicuous one on the commercial street. Its daily turnover was about $1,000. Jianghu only charged him $3,000 a month to rent his shop, which was $100 a day. This price was really not expensive. It was also because the townsfolk didn't know if these shops could make money, so Jianghu's price was relatively low. After deducting the shop rent, utilities, and so on, he could make a net profit of $900 a day, which was close to $30,000 a month. In the past 2 months, he had made $60,000 to $70,000, but Jianghu took it back just like that. He was completely stunned. Originally, he thought that he could fish in this muddy water, but who would have thought that Jianghu did not follow the rules at all? You can't do this. You're depriving Winthrop people of their right to love freedom. Seeing Jianghu's iron-blooded suppression, Augustine completely panicked. He said that Jianghu was a dictator, that Jianghu was only interested in profits, and that Jianghu was controlling the town. Jianghu actually admitted all these points of attack. And most importantly, after Jianghu admitted it, he directly fought back. This is how I am. If you don't agree with me, you can say it. The problem now was that everyone was convinced. So now, he could only use human rights and freedom in the United States to speak, but his words were already quite weak. If you want human rights and freedom, it's up to you. But if you want to maintain the current situation, then I will never allow any factory to enter the town. Winthrop is yours. Mayor Wallace can vote at any time. You can recruit as many factories as you want. If there are factories here, then I will withdraw. I can use 1 month to create a Winthrop, and I can use another month to create any Winthrop. It's not that I can't live without you. I have money. The taxes I have to pay next year are as high as $600 million. I can do whatever I want in the United States. But if you don't have me... Jianghu did not finish his words. He just looked at the people in front of him calmly. Hearing Jianghu's words, many townspeople who supported him gave him a thumbs up. They had already thought about this problem, which was why they firmly supported Jianghu. These people thought too much. They thought that as long as 1,000 ants were tied together, they could negotiate with humans. They had never thought that the two sides were not equal at all. The townspeople who had been shouting loudly lowered their heads under Jianghu's gaze. They were not ashamed. They were really afraid that Jianghu would see them. Nowadays, the townspeople were more or less involved in the tourism industry. They did not want to lose their good jobs like Toph. They believed that as long as Jianghu said something, their hotels would be empty forever, their cruise ships would never receive tourists in the morning, their small shops would be driven out of the business district, and their restaurants would be completely deserted. Yes, Jianghu was controlling the economy here. They were not people who liked to wait. As long as Jianghu wanted, he could make Winthrop go back to its pre-liberation state overnight. After Jianghu broke the window paper mercilessly, the Americans behaved themselves. No one would go against money, not to mention that Jianghu had never done anything that would incur the wrath of the heavens. He had never bullied a man, nor did he dominate a woman. He was always polite to everyone, but sometimes, this politeness would be used as a tool to attack others. You're threatening the townspeople. Everyone, don't be deceived by his flowery words. This is a hegemony, this is a dictatorship. Seeing that the townspeople had completely fallen silent, Augustine couldn't help but shout to the people around him. However, the townspeople who were very enthusiastic just now were now only those hoodlums. All the decent townspeople were now well behaved. Seeing that no one supported them, Augustine and the others were really flustered this time. They just looked at Jianghu on the high platform. Jianghu had a mocking smile on his face. He was mocking them, literally. I'm a narrow-minded person. Today's matter, I hope it's the first and last time. I'm here to make it clear that if Winthrop enters any factory, I will withdraw from here. Of course, if there is no factory, then I will help develop the tourist attractions here. I've tentatively decided to build a water park here after March next year. The specific situation will be discussed at that time. Seeing that the townspeople were well behaved, Jianghu didn't pressure them blindly. It's a good strategy to give them a carrot after giving them a stick. Jianghu has a lot of money now, and he will have more money after he collects the fish next year. The money is in the bank. In addition to paying taxes to the American government, he also has to find some ways to spend the money. Damn it. Seeing that Jianghu ruined the plan that they had prepared for so many days with just a few words, Augustine was not reconciled. He was really not reconciled, but his words attracted Jianghu's attention. By the way, I said, I'm a narrow-minded person. I don't want any shops to entertain these guys. Otherwise, they are going against me. Thank you. Pointing to Augustine and the others, Jianghu said word by word. Chapter 6:11. You bastard, I'll kill you. Upon hearing Jianghu's words, the hooligans' minds buzzed. Now, no one doubted the strength of Jianghu's words. If Jianghu said in front of everyone that they couldn't buy anything, then they really couldn't buy anything. Especially at this time, the only thing they could do was to leave Winthrop, and that was all. Jianghu was going to kill them all. Immediately, many people went crazy. They screamed and pounced on Jianghu, who was on the high platform. Connerson Peters, who had been standing behind Jianghu, grinned. He had been waiting for this scene all night. Looking at the few people who pounced on him, Connerson screamed and pounced on them. He punched the biggest guy who had been shouting the loudest and sent him flying. His face was deformed in an instant, and he even lost a few teeth. He lay on the ground, unable to move. Seeing that Connerson had actually attacked, the other hooligans did not hold back either. They screamed and pounced on him. Unfortunately, how could they be a match for Connerson? What's more, now that the townspeople had calmed down, they definitely wouldn't provoke Jianghu because of them. The women immediately retreated, and so did the old man. However, the brawny men didn't care about the fact that they were from the same town. They went up and caught a lot of people. Only 2 or 3 people ran to Connerson. Connerson wasn't polite to these people who came from 1,000 miles away to deliver their heads to him. He punched each of them until they couldn't stand up anymore. Although these hooligans were usually good at fighting, they were far inferior to Connerson, a black boxing master, when it came to fighting strength. They couldn't get up in an instant as they lay on the ground. Take these troublemakers away. At this moment, Sheriff Maris Smith, who had been sitting behind Jianghu, also stood up and shouted. The police who had been maintaining order here rushed over and took away these troublemakers. They had always been standing firmly behind Jianghu. You are helping the tyrant. You will not have a good ending. Jianghu is a dictatorial bastard. He controls the town's economy. Sooner or later, you will regret it. The townspeople will not be your slaves. Looking at Augustine Wilson, who was still shouting loudly after being taken away, Jianghu could not help but twitch his mouth. The reason why he was not worried when all kinds of news spread in the town was because he had enough trump cards. The relationship between him and the town was not an equal cooperation, although it was a win-win situation. He could make the town prosperous, but he could also destroy the town directly. This was Jiang Hai's ability. As long as he showed his attitude, these rioters in the town would be stunned. Because no matter how stupid they were, they knew that they could not let Jiang Hai go. As for occupying Jiang Hai's manor, this was the United States. Everything had to follow the law. Even if Jiang Hai's manor was deserted, it was not something they could occupy. They could steal fish from Jiang Hai's manor. Jiang Hai could shoot directly. Would they dare to occupy Jiang Hai's manor? Then they would not be forcing Jiang Hai to give in. They would be rebelling. The police in the United States would certainly not allow them to do so. If they did, who would come to the United States to invest? Therefore, after making it clear, as long as they were not crazy, they would not go against Jiang Hai. And these people did not break the law. It was freedom of speech. Inciting the crowd to resist Jiang Hai was not illegal. But Jiang Hai did not let others sell their things, so it was not illegal. Their only choice was to leave Winthrop. As for whether they had a job or not, what did it have to do with Jiang Hai? They could do whatever they wanted. Okay, I'll leave the rest to you. Mayor Wallace, Sheriff Murray, I'll go back first. Seeing that the rioters had been arrested, Jiang Hai smiled. Fight with him? These little tricks were useless. Just like what Jiang Hai said, although sometimes he would lose his mind, especially when facing certain women. But most of the time, he was still very tough. He was not a saint, nor did he have a saint's disease. He did not spend money to find people to oppose him. He knew that today's incident was caused by Ceylonese people, but this was not a reason for these people to oppose him. The law did not apply to the masses. This sentence did not exist in Jiang Hai's dictionary. He remembered these people who opposed him today. If there were any good things in the future, it would naturally have nothing to do with them. After turning his head and saying something to Mayor Wallace and Sheriff Murray, Jiang Hai returned to his car with Knerson Peters, who still wanted to continue. He started the engine and drove to his manor under the gaze of these people. Looking at the disappearing taillights of Jiang Hai's car, the people in the square fell into silence again. Ahem, I told you not to try to fight with Jiang Hai because you really can't win against him. But you didn't believe me at that time, and now? Forget it, let's disperse. The town is still the town, and we are still us. We are all villagers, so I won't say any harsh words. George, I'll let you use Toth's shop as a bar, what do you think? Looking at the quiet crowd, Mayor Wallace said calmly. Hearing Mayor Wallace's words, everyone looked at each other, and old George smiled and nodded. He had always wanted to set up a bar in the commercial street, but he was too late. A big enough shop had already been rented out, so he had not been able to get one. But now it was different. Toth dug his own grave, and Jiang Hai rented the shop to him. What could be more wonderful than this? It seemed that he was on the right side to support Jiang Hai. The other people who supported Jiang Hai were also happy. It was time to divide the peaches. If old George could get one, how could they not? Thinking of this, they couldn't help but laugh. Those who originally opposed Jiang Hai were like defeated roosters at this time. They were far from being able to threaten Jiang Hai. Now, the only thing they wanted was to keep their current positions. As for Ceylonese, who would care about him, this Jiang Hai is really interesting. Sandy, are you really not going to consider being with him? Having such a boyfriend is really something to be proud of. Looking at the gradually dispersing crowd, Mayor Wallace had a smile on his face for the first time these days. Although Jiang Hai's handling of this matter was somewhat violent, the matter had finally been suppressed. Moreover, it had also set a tone for the town. It was estimated that no one would want to bring in a factory in the future. Of course, if the tourism industry couldn't continue, then that would be a different story. When the dust had settled, he looked at Sandy Clive, and said to her with a smile, "Don't worry, Sandy Clive. If he didn't have so many women around him, maybe I would have been the mistress of the Soaring Dragon Manor. Moreover, he has a wife in Wuxia." Hearing Mayor Wallace's words, Sandy Clive, who used to have some relationship with Jiang Hai, smiled and said helplessly. Indeed, sometimes things were not as simple as people thought. Sometimes, people always have to understand some trade-offs. The world of the rich is destined to be different from ours. Because they have fewer requirements for laws and standards of living, they can live more freely. I think you know what I'm saying. Hearing Chronicles' words, Mayor Wallace smiled and shook his head. Some words didn't need to be said too clearly. Hearing Mayor Wallace's words, Chronicles also bit her lips. She was still thinking about this. This Jianghu is really a character. Just when all the dust in the square had settled, in a room in another block in the distance, Peter and a group of people also quieted down. Originally, they thought that they had succeeded. They almost opened champagne to celebrate, but they did not expect that Jianghu would amaze the world with a single brilliant feat. Putting down the cigarette in his hand, Peter looked at the town square in the distance and couldn't help but frown. Things were really troublesome. Peter, now the language debate is useless. What should we do next? Looking at Peter standing here, the people next to him whispered. This Jianghu is really tricky. Originally, they thought that this time, they were sure to win, but they did not expect that Jianghu would go up and scold them, shocking all the townspeople. Under Jianghu's abuse of power, they chose to give up the chemical plant and become cowards. These people were really despicable. But there was no other way. Even if they wanted to bite Jianghu to death, things had already happened. They had to find a way. Now, if they wanted to complete the company's task, it was estimated that it would be useless to mess with Jianghu. We can't do it openly, but we can still play some tricks. We can't bribe Jianghu, but we can bribe the people here. Although it's a bit troublesome, I want Winthrop to hold a referendum on our promotion. After thinking for a while, Peter said faintly. Since the strategy didn't work, then brute force was the only way. Although it would cost more money and time, they had to build the chemical plant in Celanese, and the place to build it could only be Winthrop. As for the official situation, they would naturally solve it. As for the problem of public opinion, they would also find a way. Hearing Peter's words, everyone present looked at each other. Although they were a little curious about what Peter would do, they chose to obey because they also knew. If the plant in Winthrop wasn't built this time, then they wouldn't have a good time when they went back. We understand. After looking at each other, everyone in Celanese nodded. Jianghu, the game has just begun. Hearing the words of the people behind him, Peter also said with a smile, you're tuning into the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.